across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. A very sweltering morning to you. I hope you managed to survive the heatwave. I mean, should we actually just do a count? Could you message in and let us know that you're still alive? Because obviously in the BBC and everyone's been a little met office, we've been rather worried that we're all going to die over the weekend. OK, not a pleasant night's sleep if you haven't got aircon. Who do you know's got aircon in their home? But if you have, well done you. You thought ahead. We salute you. The rest of us, if you're still alive, well done. I do not know how the British people manage to do it, eh? Oh, what, like the rest of the world when it's hot? They still manage to survive. Everyone just calm down. But don't calm down as much as Nicola Sturgeon appeared to have calmed down when her husband just, you know, came home with a 125 grand motorhome and an 80 grand Jaguar and 4 coffee machines worth a total of 9 grand. What were they gold-plated? What the hell did these coffee machines do, for goodness sake, other than just make coffee? She has been urged to come clean on what she knew about her husband's £400,000 theft from SNP funds. That's Peter Morrell. He's going to be sentenced in June, but yesterday he did plead guilty to those crimes. That we're going to be talking a lot about that, and I absolutely want to hear your thoughts on that. Also going to be talking about Baroness Casey, who first investigated allegations of child sexual abuse in Rotherham and says that she feels personally responsible for failing grooming gang victims. I would say she's one of the few people involved who hasn't failed them, but we'll talking to one of the many victims in Rotherham about that. Also, that extraordinary case that happened last Thursday where we had 2 teenage boys spared from jail despite raping 2 girls aged 14 and 15, one at knife point, and sentencing rules being people are claiming are not fit for purpose. How a judge is able to say, well, you behaved terribly well when you were in court, even though they were filming themselves, shared on social media, them raping the girls and laughing about it. On what planet is that happening? Well, that case has been reviewed for whether or not it was overly lenient. The answer to that is yes, it was. We'll be talking about that. Also, social media use ranks with smoking as such a threat to the health of young people. That's according to UK's most senior doctors. We'll be talking about that as well. And, of course, plenty more besides. There is so much to talk about. You know, usually a nice quiet half-term. You know how it is. Whether you are watching us on YouTube or your connected device, listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, it's great to have your company. I'm with you all the way to 1. If you have to miss anything of the show, you've got to, you know, do a job or something. I don't know. Some people are pretending to work from home today in the garden. You can check out my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Love to hear your thoughts on all the big stories. As you know, you can call in about anything, but I've got to ask you in particular, well, A, call in and let us know you're still alive after the heat wave. It's always good to know that. But really, I want to hear from you about Nicola Sturgeon, because she claims she knows nothing. She knows nothing. She is the Manuel from Fawlty Towers. She knows nothing about her husband, Peter Morrell, embezzling £400,000 from SNP funds to buy, as I say, motorhome, cars, other luxury items. What is your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can also get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. Delighted to say Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, joins me here in the cooling studio, because we've got aircon.
Thank God as well.
It's the only reason he agreed to come in, to be fair.
Yep.
Tom, very good morning to you.
Morning.
I think we should talk about the sad, very, 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 very sad death of Nicola Sturgeon, the late Nicola Sturgeon. I mean, I'm sorry to be the one to break that news on national radio. Of course, I mean, it's the only explanation for how she didn't notice all of that stuff arriving at her home, isn't it? 400 grand. She must have been dead, deaf, dumb and blind. Who knows? She claims that her now estranged, definitely not estranged while this was happening from 2017 onwards until, well, 2024, she said they were separating and getting divorced. Her husband, Peter Morrell, who'd been chief executive of the SNP and has now admitted to, in pleading guilty to stealing £400,000 out of SNP coffers. By the way, 600 grand is missing from SNP coffers. He's only pleaded guilty to 400 grand. Who knows what happened to the others? This money, by the way, is money donated by people who wanted Scottish independence. It was specifically for a fund to try and campaign for a second referendum after they lost the first one in 2014 for Scottish independence. So a massive betrayal of not just SNP, but of Scottish nationalists, you know, their main supporters. The litany of things that were bought, it's just extraordinary. I see, 125 grand motorhome, we already knew, parked on his mother, you know, Nicola Sturgeon's mother-in-law's driveway. 80 grand Jaguar, another car as well, around the 20 grand mark. I see 5 different coffee machines. I literally don't even understand how you can spend that. Two grand. It's about sort of 2 grand pair of salt and pepper shakers. 2,618. They're from Lalique, apparently. 3 grand and a robotic lawnmower.
The robotic lawnmower is my favourite.
£240 on 2. That's how much they cost, to be fair. But £240 on 2 women's umbrellas. You can get a brolly for £8. He had God knows how many pounds worth of fancy pens. I mean, like proper, you know, Mont Blanc pens. Is it possible? I'm thinking genuinely. So you and I were just saying, like, my husband walks in with like got some old golf kit or something. I'm like, what'd you spend on that? I mean, this is the sort of stuff that husbands and wives go, what? Where's? I mean, I think I might notice if my husband came home with a new Jag. I'm thinking I might notice that. Is it even conceivable that Nicola Sturgeon did not know that he had these things and did not know that the money could not be accounted for in either of their salaries?
I mean, ultimately, only Nicola Sturgeon and the people around her know the answer to that question. But as you've already been outlining, Julia, the idea that all of these very expensive fountain pens, robot lawnmowers, women's umbrellas, coffee machines,
What's a woman's umbrella as opposed to a men's umbrella?
I don't know.
Is it pink?
There is something about...
Smaller.
Just as a side note, the sorts of things that he has been spending these embezzled funds on, it's quite quaint by kind of corruption standards.
It's sort of like a sort
Was it really worth risking your liberty for a 4 grand fountain pen?
I'd rather do it. It's sort of like your maiden aunt in Bournemouth has gone on a spending spree with her bingo money. It's all a bit...
Yeah.
It's all a bit tacky, isn't it?
Ended up with a sort of QVC shopping addiction or something. That's the kind of impression you get from this. But anyway, that's obviously not the principle of it. You're absolutely right. This is a complete betrayal of Scottish independence voters who were in good faith giving their money to this particular cause and to this particular pot of money for a second independence referendum. To see it splurged and all this, and then to see Nicola Sturgeon, the great darling of Scottish nationalism and Scottish politics for a very long time, just claiming that she had no idea any of this was going on.
Just not believable.
It just stretches credibility.
Sorry, Nicola, love, no one believes you. Literally, no one believes you at all. This is embarrassing. But this is the thing. We know what they were earning. They both had, they had, publicly declared incomes, and they were both earning. I mean, he was earning, like back in 2011, he was earning 104 grand. It went down to about 80 grand by 2021. Her tax return showed a gross income of 140 grand, because she was First Minister. Okay, so we know what they were earning. These are not poor salaries. These are good salaries. But they ain't. I'm just going to pop out and get an 80 grand Jag. Wife won't notice or care. Yeah. Not an issue. And he was getting stuff sent, on Amazon, getting stuff sent to, her parents' homes. Were they not wondering? If a package arrives, who sent me this? What's this? Where's this from? I mean, I'm sorry, none of this adds up at all. But it's the betrayal of the SNP funds, betrayal of the people in the party, the voters. But also the fact that the case comes to court just like a week or two after finally comes to court, a week or two after the Scottish elections. I'm sorry, I think a lot of people are quite right to be reasonably questioning the timing of this, because it took a hell of a long time for there to be any investigation of this, and there is a real concern about Scotland is basically, and has been for quite a long time now, since the SNP got into power, a one-party state. Yeah. And as we know, with one-party council, whether it's the Tories, whether it's Labour, or any other party, one-party states, one-party council, tend to become a little bit, shall we say, incestuous, as in it's in everyone's interest that people don't talk about this or don't talk about that. It took a very long time for those investigations to go into Peter Murrell and Nicola Sturgeon. Now, her lawyers put out a statement saying she had been cleared and had cleared of any wrongdoing. But that's not true. The police had decided there was not enough evidence to actually arrest her or charge her with any crimes. But she did face questioning. She claimed at the time, when she was actually a senior figure in the SNP, she claimed that she had cooperated fully with their police inquiries. Again, that's not true. She did not. She, it is understood, answered no comment. Now, you're not required to either say anything that could incriminate yourself or indeed incriminate your other half, because that lawyer, the husband and wife, that you're allowed to have, that intimate relationship without, having to give evidence against them, and that is protected in law. However, that is not fully cooperating.
No, not in the slightest, and it's one in a long line of very slippery things that Nicola Sturgeon has said about this investigation. I mean, there's that clip that's been doing the rounds. Obviously, this is before any arrests were made, of her talking about in what a healthy state the SNP's finances were. And
people like Joanna Cherry, former SNP MP, say they were desperately calling for investigation and were being told they were traitors.
Exactly. So this is part and parcel, I think, of the halo which was atop Nicola Sturgeon's head for a very long time. The fact that in Scotland, vast swathes of the media there, as well as the even parts of the kind of criminal justice system. You saw that in the treatment of Alex Salmond, which is a whole other mess that we can't get into.
But again,
that
was coming from, I mean, the late Alex Salmond, that was coming from her, the head of the party.
No, exactly. And that sense in which, in a situation where you have the SNP dominating Scottish politics to the extent that it has, it just provides a lot of room, shall we say, for activity like this to take place, and also a lack of scrutiny from people who are basically on board with the project, would rather look the other way,
and do a disservice to democracy.
See these stories as inconvenient.
There are parties that I feel more of an affinity for than others, and everything, and politicians of various different parties that has not and will not, and I'm sure my audience can attest this, never stops me, questioning people, even if they're friends. If you're on air and you're in your political capacity, you will be questioned by me in the same way. But it is extraordinary. Look, she's been given a very easy ride, I think, even in the media generally over this.
No,
she's somehow a victim. No, you're not, love. Her treatment, the treatment of the SNP of Alex Salmond, who I'm sure wasn't a perfect soul, but he went to court. He was found not guilty on all of the charges of harassment and sexual, harassment of women. I mean, completely exonerated in court. That vicious sort of, that was a political, assassination. That's what that was. And then the fact that she was just hailed as this fantastic leader during COVID. Again, I mean, for all the criticism I have of Boris Johnson, oh my God, I have a lot to this day. Nicola Sturgeon's, in Scotland, the death rate in care homes and the death rate overall from COVID as a result of the policy was higher than it was in England. Simple as that. It's got lower population, in terms of in people's closeness living to each other. They had worse outcomes than England had, and they had some insane lockdown measures, a lot stricter and for longer. And I'm sorry, she is not this great leader that's been hailed. She's been hailed at. The whole thing is a complete fraud. I used to really admire her as a media operator. I thought she was a brilliant media operator. Turns out that was all she could do. It really, I mean, absolutely. I'd love to. I have to say, get in touch. Phone lines absolutely flashing away here. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. What is your reaction to Nicola Sturgeon's claim that she simply did not know anything about Peter Murrell, her husband, who is an SNP chief executive, embezzling 400 grand of money to buy a motorhome, Jags, and God knows what else. Let's also talk about another story. We mentioned, social media. She's strong on that. The Academy of Royal Colleges. Now, medical royal colleges. This is a sort of super academy. We have all these royal academies for different, surgeons and GPs and others. Well, this is the academy of all of those royal colleges. About 22 of them, and they are saying that actually the use of social media by children and young people is as damaging for them as smoking. Now, I can feel your colleague, Mr. Christopher Snowden, whom you do a regular podcast, Last Orders. I can feel his blood boiling when he saw this morning, first thing. They're saying that this is an epidemic of harm to children, continually exposed to hateful, addictive and grossly distressing content. This has come out on the day that the government consultation into whether or not there should be a social media ban or some restrictions, it ends today. There's talk of Keir Starmer being urged, like Angela Rayner and goodness knows how many others, for there to be a social media ban and to bring it in as soon as possible. We're expecting, frankly, there's going to be something before the Makerfield by-election on the 18th of June. But the whole point of having a consultation is to listen to what people say.
Yeah.
So you should, if they make an announcement tomorrow, by definition that was a waste of our time and money. They said they'd look at what happened in Australia. They brought in a social media ban for under 16s in December, and according to evidence there, it's not like 20% of kids, 60% of kids are still accessing social media in exactly the same way. So is the answer a ban? I mean, should there be any controls at all, Tom?
Well, I think it's quite clear that there should be age restrictions on certain forms of content. Social media is a slightly different kettle of fish, isn't it? Because of the fact that provided those controls in terms of what people might be able to see at a certain age are in place, just allowing them to access these platforms full stop, it's not necessarily that damaging. It can only become damaging if the amount of time that a child is spending on these devices, on these platforms, becomes excessive. But that's ultimately an issue for parents. And I feel like the tendency towards these kinds of measures just speaks to a lack of faith in parents to do it, sometimes a lack of faith in parents themselves.
I have an absolute lack of faith in parents. I think an awful lot of parents are abjectly failing their children on this front. But I think they're not aware. A lot of them not aware. I'm in two camps on this one at the same time, because I do think that, you know, giving your mobile phone or to your child and letting like a 4-year-old sit and watch YouTube videos or TikTok videos. We had a supposedly social, what was she? So some sort of parenting expert on the show on Thursday, with all due respect to her, but she was talking about as a grandmother, difficult was, with her daughter, letting the 4-year-old son sit there on TikTok. What the hell is your 4-year-old doing sitting on TikTok? Like, have a word. I mean, what are you thinking? I mean, I'm sorry. If you saw someone give a glass of beer to a 4-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 9-year-old, you would say, surely you would say something, people. You see someone giving them that 7-year-old, a fag, you would say something. You give them drugs, you would say something. I'm of the view that it should be socially a source of, it should be illegal as a source of shame. Plate of chips is not a healthy lunch or a dinner for your child. People need to say something. But equally, kids sitting on mobile phones the whole time. But all we have to do is look at the parents. That's what the parents are doing the whole time.
No, exactly. And I think often the claims that this is kind of pestering and pressure from the kids themselves is just a bit of a nonsense, really. I think one of the reasons, and people admit this on a bit of probing, that they find it so difficult, is because the phone has become a kind of crutch. It's become an easy way to...
It's a babysitter.
It's a babysitter. It's become a way to quiet the child down. And therefore, there is this, there's this kind of sense that we're helpless before this technology. I don't think that's true. And also I think these measures, even if you supported them, it's not obvious that they work in an age in which young people in particular, the ones you are trying to keep off these devices, are the ones who most know how to circumvent these
I was in a pub at 14 having booze. Do I think that it should be legal to sell booze to 14-year-olds? No. I don't. I mean, we have
it's
laws.
It's not the only reason against it. I think you put those two things together and you think, what is the point?
But the social media thing, is it that kids are on it for a long time? Is it the age? Is it that it's addictive? Is it what they're seeing? Is it because they're seeing explicit pornography? Is it because they're often seeing, violent stuff? Is it because it's affecting their... you really see these TikTok videos and YouTube and everything's flash, flash, flash. Is it affecting their ability to concentrate? Books are really boring compared to that, but if you haven't seen that, you'll find books exciting, and books are what's going to get you through a better life. We need to work out what is it, because when they say they've got these massively damaged children who are attempting to kill themselves or killing animals, look, that's at the extreme end. What about the other kids who turn up to school but the teachers say they're tired, they can't concentrate? Can they not concentrate because they spend 8 hours on social media, or because they were spending 8 hours on social media until 3 a.m? There are like sort of 20 different aspects to this, and we need to sort of isolate where is the problem and what are the different problems, because some of those are parenting, some of those are things that surely we could control the algorithm. I would like the algorithms controlled even for adults, to be honest with you. I don't understand why when I'm on X, Twitter, and I say I follow 400 people and I just want to see their feed and who they retweet and look at things. Why am I constantly inundated with stuff that from people I don't follow? Yeah. Like, for you, and it defaults to it, and I keep changing the default setting back, and it defaults back. That I think shouldn't be allowed. I think it's perfectly possible that they should, they keep saying you should be able to control your feed. Well, that's what I want to do. I don't want to see what some random racist thinks about anything. I don't care. Or some random TikToker or something who's posted something on X. But kids are seeing that stuff, and we're seeing that stuff. But I would like to see an under 18 thing that You can be on social media. But you don't have to have them controlling what you see. The algorithms, to me, are the problem, and the amount of time.
Yeah, I think the answer here really is doing what Elon Musk promised he would do with X, never really did, which was devolving the issue of content moderation down to the individual. That if you want to be on a Wild West kind of Twitter, then go for it. But if you want, as most people do, to just look at the stuff that people they follow has put out there, if you don't want to be bombarded by any lunatic left, right, or somewhere else, then that's the experience that you should have. I think when it comes down to social media, it's quite clear that a few things can be true at the same time. Social media in general can be quite a good thing. You can get more information, you can keep in touch with people you wouldn't otherwise keep in touch with.
Campaigning against lockdown, campaigning against the trans madness, we wouldn't have been able to do that without social media.
It would never have happened. The whole kind of edifice on any of these kind of issues wouldn't have cracked were it not for people being able to get their word out on social media. Can people spend a bit too much time on it? Absolutely. Should it be banned or heavily restricted for teenagers? Probably not. Is it causing them to go to hell in a handcart, become, kind of hate-filled monsters or, deeply troubled mentally? Probably not as well. Any time you see one piece of technology being accused of all manner of ills, it's probably not the technology.
Do you remember when MTV apparently was causing all these kids to be serial killers? Do you remember? No, but that's the thing, and the instinct for a lot of governments now is ban it. And I mean, Keir Starmer said he was in two minds, but the evidence didn't look very clear. But now there are so many people saying, oh, but we think you should ban it. Oh, well, in that case, and again, he doesn't know, he doesn't have a view on it himself. No. But it should be evidence-based. Is this going to work? Is this actually going to protect children while also not impinging on our ability as adults to do things? But again, I don't want Elon Musk's people any more than I wanted the people who owned it before to decide what I see. I want to decide what I see, and I want, when I've decided that, for that not to be interfered with. But here's the other thing with kids in particular. People often talk about what kids are doing with screens, and that's bad. If your kid is spending 8 hours on a screen, that's a parenting issue. That's absolutely a parenting issue, and we're going to have to start taking parents to task on this. Don't stay quiet. You really should. You speak to your family members. You think no, that is bad. It's not educational. Peppa Pig is not educational for 3-year-olds. End of. Nothing to discuss. Stop it. It's not. It's you getting your kid a babysitter. But here's the thing. It's not necessarily what the kids are seeing. It's what they're and sitting there. It's what they're not doing. They're not physically moving around. They're not playing with other children. They're not learning dexterity with their fingers. They're not building things. They're not playing with Lego. They're not doing jigsaws. They're not reading. Learning to read. They're not being outside. They're not playing sport. Children are now turning up to school. They don't know how to throw a ball. No one's ever thrown a ball with them. I mean, and they don't have that physical ability. I mean, it's and they're not having physical sort of faced interaction with other human beings, either kids their own age or mum or grandpa, whoever it is. And I really do think that I think when you've got a kid, I think you become more aware of it. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I think you can see out and about so much more. The way in which you could be in a restaurant and you see a child just being handed a tablet, handed a smartphone in order to occupy them. It's not good, even if it's not deeply damaging on some psychological level. It's clearly not good for society. But again, it's what do you do about it? And I think where Keir Starmer is concerned, what we're seeing repeat here is what happens often when you have a Prime Minister who is on his way out, doesn't really know what he's doing, maybe wants a bit of a legacy, is you ban something. Rishi Sunak and this generational smoking ban, very similar. No, but what I find so strange about it is no one's going to build a statue to Keir Starmer because he banned social media for under-16s. But anything that gives him some sort of sense of vision he's going to cling to. But I think it would be his 16th U-turn because he said he wouldn't do this. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. There's loads more I want to talk about, including that outrageous case of a judge. That judge needs to be retired. I don't care if he's 21. Retire that judge tomorrow who thinks that because they behave nicely in court, 2 teenage boys should not be jailed for raping 2 girls, one at knife point, laughing about it and putting on social media. There we go, back to social media. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But in particular, I want to hear from you on Nicola Sturgeon. She says she didn't know at all about her husband embezzling 400 grand's worth of SNP funds to fund things like a 125 grand motorhome, 80 grand Jaguar and all of that. Because, of course, none of us would notice that outside our home, would we? Do give us a call. Love to hear your thoughts to that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to The Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Just to let you know, some breaking news from Belgium, but several people are reported to have been killed after a train collided with a school bus. This morning in Bugenhout in East Flanders. A minibus being used for school transport was hit by a train on a level crossing. We'll keep you posted on that, but it's understood that a number of people have been killed in that collision. Right now, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. I want to hear from you. Your reaction. Nicola Sturgeon claims she knew nothing about her husband embezzling 400 grand's worth of S&P funds. He has pleaded guilty. He will be remanded in custody, interestingly, and he will not be sentenced until later in June. But what's your reaction to what Nicola Sturgeon's lawyers have said on her behalf? This is the number to call, 0344 499 1000. And George in Dundee has done just that. Hello to George.
Hi, Julia. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Do you mind me asking, first of all, before we ask what you think, are you a Scottish nationalist supporter, or at least an independent supporter?
No.
You're not?
No.
OK, so you don't
I've spoken to you before about the blessed St. Nicola.
You have, yes.
Here we go with my thoughts on this. You would think I'd put the boot in here, but I actually believe her that she saw nothing.
Interesting.
The reason being, she was the only woman in Scotland that couldn't see Isla Bryson had a penis in his leggings. That's why I believe her.
It's just for people, reminding people, Isla Bryson was the double rapist who wore terrible blonde wig. I don't know if he had stuff stuffed in his bra or not, but clearly had a meat and two veg in his pale pink shiny leggings that he wore outside court.
Nicola couldn't see that.
No, apparently he was definitely a woman.
Aye, but the thing is with Nicola Sturgeon, a lot of Scots know she is devious, manipulative and a liar. And now I think the world is beginning to see that. She is also now a proven coward with her no-comment interview to the police. I long for the day that this woman is shacked up with Isla, and that will be justice for this country and will serve her right for the crime she's committed against this country.
Well, you said that is your comment. Obviously, that, you know, I'm sure Nicola Sturgeon would say that's your honestly held opinion. Nicola Sturgeon, for legal reasons, would say different things. But again, it is reported that she did say no comment in her the interviews about that, all those items that had been bought with embezzled funds. And you know, but her lawyers have said, look, you know, she has been cleared of any crime. They did not have any evidence to charge her with any crime, but those aren't quite the same things. And she didn't. She clearly, if she did say no comment, she did not cooperate fully with the police.
She didn't cooperate. She has no intention of cooperating because she knows she can't handle. This woman cannot handle being questioned. Cannot handle, and she knows, and her lawyers will know she will drop herself in it.
Do you think that she's one of those people? And I think a lot of people get like this, where she's been treated as St. Nicholas. She can do no wrong. She gets, you know, kid glove treatment from the Westminster political media and from most of the media in Scotland. You know, she's ruled the roost for a very long time. That actually she started believing her own publicity.
She didn't just believe her own publicity. She believed she could do no wrong. She believed everything that come out her mouth was true. Yeah. 6 inches off the bottom of classroom doors. Yes. Stopping COVID at the border. I mean, it's an endless list of fantasy politics for this woman, and now we've got to believe that she can't see a camper van, can't see in a very expensive coffee maker, and can't see crystal salt and pepper shakers.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I think I got Perspex ones. I think they cost about 20 quid. I mean, these people were robbed. George, I hate to tell you this, but I think you may be off her Christmas card list after that call. But George, thank you very much. David's in Gloucestershire. David, what do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia. Well, I
Morning.
couldn't bend what he was just saying. It's very funny. But there's 2 points, really. First of all, they said the invoices that were going through.
Yeah.
Well, I worked in a business where we had to, my boss had to oversee the invoices, but he always sort of showed, I always had sight of them just to make sure that there was nothing untoward.
Yeah.
So how nobody saw anything untoward is unbelievable.
Well, you know who was in charge of signing off the accounts of the SNP, don't you?
Well, I'm assuming
Nicola Sturgeon.
was. Exactly. So she's guilty by that effect, almost, if you like.
Oh, at the very least, a failure to actually carry out her due diligence.
Yes. Because surely if you're going to turn around and say, I don't know what he was putting it down to, let's say there was stationery or PR costs, but you'd have said,
It's a lot of envelopes.
What's come, what's arrived,
Yeah.
But my other main point is he must be made to pay every single penny back, and not just the 400,000 or whatever, plus the 2.5 million prosecution cost.
Yeah.
Anything he has got, he must never have a single penny to his name till every penny plus interest is paid back.
Well, my guess is that the reason they were mysteriously last year estranged and separated and then getting divorced is they've already separated the finances, so that if there is a bid to get some of that money back, it's only from his side. It's my guess. I'm not saying that's what they've done, but I wouldn't be surprised. David, I understand from you. Again, it's not just the crime. There's a massive cover-up. There's no doubt at all about it. So I think there's going to be a lot more to come out of this. And at the sentencing, we may hear more. Really appreciate that call, David. It's 10:35. We're going to go straight to a break, and then we are going to be talking to a guest who's not only someone who understands about crime as an investigative journalist and writer, but also someone who has actually himself served time in prison for fraud, the exact same crime. We'll talk to David Shipley up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's talk more about, well, not just Nicola Sturgeon and her husband Peter Morrell, but other stories in the news as well, with David Shipley. He's my next guest. He's an investigative journalist, a crime and justice writer. You'll know him as a regular on the show, but also, interestingly, in this context, David, you are a former prisoner yourself, having served time for fraud.
That's right.
You've got a lot of different hats on. Just, I suppose, your reaction to the crimes pleaded guilty yesterday, Peter Morrell, but also Nicola Sturgeon being completely unaware.
Yeah, if you look at the stuff he was buying, I think there are two explanations for that sort of behaviour. One might be that this was a sort of pathological addiction to buying luxury goods.
Yeah.
It's so weird, some of the stuff, the $2,500 on salt and pepper shakers, this sort of thing, just really weird purchases. Or and it's not clear to me whether these things have been recovered. It's possible he was buying them because they had high resale value because he wanted to raise cash. I mean, that's the other explanation. Do I find it credible that a husband and wife living together in the same house wouldn't notice this stuff? Do I think it credible that Sturgeon didn't notice it? Not really, no. I think if there's suddenly loads of things getting delivered to your house for your husband, you as his wife would notice and say, oh, what's all this stuff you're buying? Oh, suddenly we have very expensive plates and fancy salt and pepper shakers. What's going on here?
I think also, I've got to be honest with you, I mean, I live with a bloke, and I mean genuinely, like, there's plenty of stuff that I could bring into the house and he would absolutely not notice. I mean, I could dye my hair blonde or something.
If he started getting stuff delivered, I think you would probably notice.
Yeah, exactly. Right? No, exactly. Oh, that's what I'm saying. Women do. Now, there's a lot of talk about, well, actually, they're now separated, they're estranged, that actually, were they actually living together in that house? Was she there? But then things like, it was his, her mother-in-law, he parked this 125 grand motorhome. Surely they went and visited occasionally and went, when did you buy the motorhome then?
That looks expensive, And I think that's part of it. Also, I obviously at the time, Sturgeon was saying that she was, cooperating fully with the investigation, but we've now learned that she gave a complete no comment interview, which may well have been good legal advice, but it doesn't really fit with a pretense of transparency.
Yeah, and there is a big issue here in terms of the timing. This guilty plea comes to this court date, happens to be after the Scottish elections on May the 7th. The fact that this case took an awfully long time, and it took an awfully long time for any charge to be brought. I mean, yes, of course, this would be complicated. There's a lot of paperwork to go through and all the money disappearing and checking when things were bought and things. But again, I think a lot of people throughout this have been very concerned that there is some sort of level of, should we say, you pat my back, I'll pat your back, sort of collusion between all of the different authorities in Scotland. You've got a government, you've got a major political party at one point, and you've got the police and things like, and everyone's very cosy and everyone's sort of all on the same side, and they're all mates and they've all been in power for a long time together. And there's a lot of concern, and a lot in the media as well, very little scrutiny, both in Westminster and in Scotland, of Nicola Sturgeon for a long time, that actually, people allowed this to happen.
I mean, I think definitely the SNP got a fairly soft time from the press in terms of scrutiny as its surgeon for quite some time. I would say that there are astonishing backlogs on these sorts of things.
Yeah, that's true.
So, for example, in my case, when I was asked to interview by the police, I gave a full confession, and it took almost a year before that I then appeared in the Crown Court to plead guilty, and then almost another year before I was sentenced. So that's if someone is completely confessing, not trying to sort of slow the process down at all with denials,
it can still take a hell of a long time.
Then it took almost 2 years from sort of first interview to sentencing. So I think sometimes there's conspiracy, but also there's a huge amount of incompetence and just slack in these systems, and all a bit broken as well.
And perhaps we only notice it when it's a high-profile case. Well, let's talk about another high-profile case, because I think this absolutely has horrified people. And interestingly, seeing that Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, Mr. Chagos Islands, that he is looking at whether or not this sentencing should be reviewed as being too lenient. But we've got two teenage boys, 15-year-olds, receiving youth rehabilitation orders after they assaulted, raped two girls and filmed the incident in two separate incidents, 2 months apart, one at knife point, filming themselves on social media, raping the girls, laughing about it, putting it on social media afterwards, and spared from jail because the judge at the time said, this is Judge Nicholas Rowland, who should absolutely resign today, ruled that the boys were very young. I mean, they were the same age as the girls. When I had a 15-year-old, I'm very, very sure that she knew what was right and wrong, and possessed low intellectual capacity. Right, they're a bit thick, and they're teenage boys. Well, we've all met them, and so one of them suffered from ADHD. Well, of course they do. Everyone does, don't they? But apparently he wanted to avoid criminalising these children unnecessarily. I mean, I would have thought unnecessarily they wouldn't be criminalised if they didn't go around raping girls, but also that they behaved very well in court. Shame they didn't behave very, very well when they were raping a girl at knife point. The 15-year-old, one of the victims, the 14-year-old, as well as the 15-year-old, the 15-year-old has spoken out about how it was like having a rock to hit her in the face. when she saw the sentencing, going through that and then being brave enough to go to the police, go to court, give evidence, relive everything, all the time that would have taken. And then these boys are basically given a slap on the wrist. No wonder Gisèle Pellicot, the French rape survivor, of course, drugged and raped hundreds of times by her husband and many hundreds of other men in France. She has done an interview today saying she's deeply shocked that these two boys and a third boy who was also convicted of sort of encouraging them had been spared sentences. The worry is, how often is this happening that we don't hear about it?
Well, yeah, I think the thing to understand here is obviously these sentences are disgusting and they are far too lenient, but they're actually an expected outcome of our sentencing guidelines. So according to the sentencing guidelines, if you are young, if you are low IQ, if you have behavioural or mental health issues, if you have a limited understanding of right and wrong, all of those things mean you should get a shorter sentence. And what's particularly concerning about that in the case of sexual offences is we know there's robust evidence on this, that an early age of starting to commit sexual offences is highly predictive of an antisocial personality disorder. Yeah. Which, interestingly, by the way, antisocial personality disorder can often be misdiagnosed as ADHD in young boys. So antisocial personality disorder means people with that, men typically, will commit more and more serious violent and sexual offences over their lifetime. So we have a system which is actively saying that the highest risk people should receive lower sentences.
Whereas they are the biggest risk. Yeah, but especially also, these boys didn't really understand right from wrong. We've had this about, a migrant from Afghanistan. Well, the judge has said in your country, you're allowed to rape girls, so you didn't understand, so I won't give you such a sentence. By definition, someone who doesn't really understand that it's wrong to hold a knife to a girl and rape her, I'm thinking, I don't want those people on the street ever. I'm thinking they're always going to be a risk to us.
Yeah, I mean, someone who doesn't understand that it's wrong to rape a schoolgirl at knife point is clearly higher risk. And this is sort of the issue, actually. We sentence on the basis that we're sort of concerned about the moral agency of the criminal. Yeah. But actually, that's not really that important. We should be concerned about the safety of victims and the safety of the wider body politic. So what that means is, in my view, we need to completely change the sentencing guidelines such that people who have higher risk indicators, like no sense of right and wrong, like high impulsivity, like, an early age of committing sexual offences, should be sentenced to longer terms in prison because they clearly pose a greater risk.
But this is the thing. This is all about this whole looking for an explanation for people committing crime and somehow making the criminal perpetrator kind of one of the victims, because we all know much easier not to commit crimes, crimes of acquisition or drug dealing or whatever, if you come from a nice family and everything's been fine and not worried about feeding yourself or anything. I get all that, but this idea that somehow there's always an excuse. Well, my dad left, or I was abused, or I was this. There's always an excuse, and it's like the criminal justice system is constantly looking for a reason to justify giving a lower sentence.
Yeah, and I think it's probably well intended but actively harmful, because what it drives is this desire to explain and excuse. And actually, in my experience, with my friends, for example, I have always recognised that the only person who is morally culpable for that is me. I did something stupid and dishonest. Yeah. Now, I look at men I know from prison, the ones who've managed to turn their lives around and step away from crime are the ones who are able to say, the only person responsible for my choices is me. Yeah. And that includes, I know a man who committed a murder when he was young, and he had a terrible, terrible upbringing in every kind of deprivation you could think, but he's able to recognise that he alone was responsible for his choices. And I think if we want to rehabilitate people, that has to begin with accepting personal responsibility for our own actions and choices.
And again, otherwise we're just saying, any quite thick teenage boy whose parents have managed to go and get him an ADHD diagnosis so they can get some disability benefit for him and probably a free car, who are we kidding? Well, they can go and rape with impunity. That's basically the message that is being sent, and that, I'm afraid, ain't going to fly. Do you think it's likely that I think it's right, it'll be referred to the Court of Appeal. Do you think the Court of Appeal will actually raise the sentence, or, as you say, have they actually followed, this judge followed sentencing guidelines?
I think it is a very unduly low sentence, and there clearly will be political pressure to look at it again. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the sentence increased. But yeah, I think it's important to not be distracted by this one case. I think Lord Hermer and Starmer and so on would like us to think this is a one-off.
And it's
the sentencing guidelines make outcomes like this part of the process.
David Shipley,
sentencing guidelines.
Always fantastic to talk to you. So many different perspectives. Always appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, listening to that. Just a quick comment on that.
Well, I think we just completely lost our way where these kinds of crimes are concerned. I'm all for rehabilitation, but there's obviously certain people that you are willing to give that chance to, and certain people, given the depravity of the crime which they've committed, which you're not. That seems to me a pretty firm distinction that we can make, and would get us out of this mess that we've got into.
And part of rehabilitation is you have to acknowledge your crime and accept your punishment. Then you can rehabilitate. Right, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about whether or not there should or should not be a social media ban for children. That's what looks likely to be on the cards and announced in the next few weeks. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very sad news coming out of Belgium. I mentioned to you earlier that several people reported to have died after a train collided with a school bus. This is in Bugenhout, East Flanders. A minibus being used for school transport was hit by a train on a level crossing. We now know that two teenagers, one adult passenger and the bus driver did die in that collision. Very, very sad news there. More in the news at 11 o'clock. Right now, let's return to the subject we were talking about a little bit earlier with Tom Slater about this possibility of a social media ban for under 16-year-olds. This is something that's been brought in Australia in December, although it certainly hasn't been a rip-round success, because some 60% of young people are still easily accessing their social media. This today is the final day of the government's consultation on what to do on this issue to protect children. And there's lots of talk that the Prime Minister will announce as early as tomorrow a plan to go ahead with the social media ban. But should we? Let's talk about this with Jennifer Powers, who's founder and director of Unplugged Coalition. They're a campaign group which is aimed at reclaiming childhood from addictive technology. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. So would you be in favour of a social media ban for under 16-year-olds?
I'm definitely in favor of restricting children's access to harmful social media platforms, absolutely, and also really keen that parents delay giving their children smartphones for as long as possible.
But what about a ban?
Yeah, I think the Australia model is a really interesting one, and it's not as much of a ban as you might think. It's actually a ban on the platforms, not on the children.
Yeah.
So it says to the platforms, you are not allowed to give accounts to under 16s. And in Australia, they've grouped I think it's 8 platforms together within that definition.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of Australia going first is that we've been able to learn a little bit already about how that's working. And I think we're coming up with a little bit more of a refined approach here in the UK. So as you said, we don't know what, if anything, the government will choose to do. But what they have spoken about in the House of Commons after being pushed really hard by the opposition parties is to actually restrict addictive by design features for under 16s, which would mean, again, the onus is on the platform, not on the child.
Well, that's the thing. That is a crucial aspect, isn't it? When you say you go back, I mean, one of the things that happened in Australia was the kids already had these social media accounts. They weren't closed down. They just carried on. You just can't. It's harder for them to open them.
They were supposed to be closed down, but that was the tech companies not wanting to do it because, of course, they want eyeballs on the internet. They want to get our kids on.
They make money from us. If it's free, it's because you're actually the product rather than the customer. But this thing, I would like the addictive by design aspects of social media to be gone for me as an adult too. Now,
that I don't see that happening, although that would be an option. I think the brilliance of this idea that campaigners here in the UK have come up with is that if you create, it's just 8 social media companies like they have in Australia, then very quickly a 9th is going to pop up and all the children are just going to go there, right? So it's much better, rather than doing it on a brand basis, to do it on a features basis. So what this could mean a ban by the back door, in the sense that if however many social media platforms there are that have these addictive by design features, if they chose not to disable those features because they wanted 17-year-olds to 77-year-olds to still be on the platform, then at their choice, they would have to institute age assurance mechanisms. And that would create a sort of default ban on under 16s accessing the platforms. But again, that's up to the platforms, and then it's up to us in terms of which ones. And also, let's be honest, this isn't the full solution, okay? I think this is a modest, reasonable, and timely intervention that the government has been pulled kicking and screaming to take some action on.
Okay.
But it's not going to solve everything.
It's not going to solve everything because parents are still going to give their phones. I mean, there is also the issue, anything that basically identifies who children are on the internet, by definition, unless it's, the parents doing that, you also then need to identify adults, and once adults are identified, then you no longer have anonymity. And to say social media,
not quite true. I'm going to push back on that. Well, there are some people who, I don't know, they like to be these free speech absolutists, and so they kind of put their cape on.
I'm not a free speech absolutist.
No, I'm not claiming you. I've been in debates with others who say, "Oh, this is awful. This is going to be age gating." I said, "Look, there is the technology out there to do double-blind age verification. So basically, there's a couple of steps in between, and the platform never knows your name, your age, your birth date, anything about you, but it is verified that you're of a certain age." That is one option. Okay, there's a whole range.
That is more acceptable to me. However, I wouldn't trust that in, say, totalitarian countries where there is more restriction.
Sure.
But that is a very big issue in terms of people's freedom. And I'm not a free speech absolutist.
I'm just saying there are
solutions. There are ways, again, but I have a funny feeling that most totalitarian governments can get around that. But here's the thing. How much of this, though, is something that the government should do? How much of this is what responsible companies could do? I mean, we know a lot of these companies that, that push the Facebook and the X and everything, and they all pretend they're either about free speech or be nice to everyone, freedom in exchange of ideas. No, they're just money-making machines, and that's what they're doing, and our children are the product. But
I have no problem.
Let me finish, Jennifer.
Go ahead.
But how much of this is actually just bloody awful parenting?
Okay. Listen, I, in some ways, don't blame the tech companies because they're acting very rationally, and the politicians and the regulators have not been willing to regulate them sufficiently to make them remove harmful content or to keep our children off. So my view is, as a society, we need to come together and demand more of our government, of our political elite, and say, this is ridiculous. They're taking the mickey. They've taken a generation of children and they've been sacrificed on the altar of addictive by design and features and content, and it's just not good enough. And so do I think there's a role for parents? Absolutely. I give talks a couple times a week to groups of parents in schools all over the country. And I tell them, listen, if these things happen to your kids in real life, you would not let them go back to Amelia's house or Billy's house, right?
Yeah.
If they came home with bruises or they were crying or they'd been shown hardcore pornography, you wouldn't let them go back to that person's house. Why on earth, when that happens online, do you still let them have a smartphone? Do you still let them take their smartphone to bed with them at night? Are you still letting an 8-year-old on Snap or an 11-year-old on TikTok? So absolutely there's a role for parents. But also I'm ambitious for all kids, and we do draw lines in society. You know, I believe in strong borders, whether that's our national borders, whether it's, you know, respect for the police. There are sometimes in society where we come together and we go, no, actually, we're going to draw a line in the sand here. It is not okay for these big tech platforms to come in and steal our kids' childhood. And so for me, putting that as a marker in the sand and saying, no, you know what? You can sell what you want to, you know, the mums on TikTok or Insta or anything like that. But our kids are off limits. And will it be perfect? No.
Yeah,
but will it be a really strong message that says our kids are not for sale in this country, you're not allowed, and over time, in 5 or 10 years, we will live in a very different country where children are raised to understand they should not be on smartphones and they should not be on social media platforms.
Really good to talk to you, Jennifer. Jennifer Powers, founder and director of the Unplugged Coalition. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, listening to that now, you know, you are a free speech absolutist, you know, I mean, again, I am genuinely concerned about kids being on these things. Phones generally, amount of time, what they're seeing, addictive, all of that. I mean, but I'm also concerned about impacting freedom of adults. Yeah. By trying to identify who the children are. Do you think, I mean, that double-blind verification, things like that, is that an option?
I mean, potentially. I'm never of the view that, first of all, social media companies are beyond regulation. Of course, they should be in certain areas. And also, children are different. Children don't are by law and by convention not able to access the same kind of material, don't even have full free speech rights in the same way. But at the same time, is this the right reform? Will it have the intended consequence, or is it going to just create essentially a PG-rated internet for everyone?
Exactly. And is it just a knee-jerk reaction? You say that certainly what's happened in Australia has absolutely not worked. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Lots more top guests coming up. Lots more of your calls coming about Nicola Sturgeon. Nicola, love, we absolutely believe you didn't know a thing. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's coming up 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, keep your calls, keep your messages coming in, just verifying that you are alive after the weekend. The usual climate hysterics are absolutely convinced we're all going to die at the weekend. And somehow, you know, most of us, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you, some people do die. People die. It's happened. People get born. People die. It is the human condition. But I think most of us manage to make it through okay. Great to have your company if you're one of those people. If you do miss anything from the show, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. Not only will you never miss a thing, I couldn't stop saying it. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Nicola Sturgeon being urged to come clean over what she did know about her husband embezzling 400 grand from the SNP coffers. Also, the US has launched new strikes on Iran in an act, they say, of self-defence, targeting missile sites and boats attempting to place mines near the Strait of Hormuz. Lots of talk about these peace negotiations, but we're told we are probably weeks away. Plus, campaigners have warned that new transgender guidance, finally issued by the government on last Thursday, approved by Labour, risks putting women in danger. That is all coming up. Plenty more besides. Delighted to say Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, joins me still in the studio. Morning. Once again to you. Question we're putting to everyone this morning. Is Nicola Sturgeon deaf, dumb and blind? Is she remotely convincing when she claims that she knew nothing about her husband, Peter Murrell, who was chief executive of the SNP, the party of which she was the leader and First Minister representing of the whole of Scotland? He embezzled £400,000 from SNP funds. He bought a 125 grand motorhome, 2 cars. One of them was an 80 grand Jag, and bought numerous other luxury items. I mean, thousands of pounds spent on coffee machines, 2 grand spent on a salt and pepper shaker. Have you got a 2 grand salt and pepper shaker? What's your reaction to Nicola Sturgeon's claims that I know nothing? She is the Manuel of Scottish politics. I know nothing. Give us a call on 03444 499 1000 to have your say. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X as well at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Tom, I mean, I don't know anyone. I literally don't know anybody other than, I think, Nicola Sturgeon, who believes that she didn't know anything. She's no longer in frontline politics. She's no longer in the Scottish Parliament. She's moved on. I think by now she would have hoped that she'd moved on to one of those lovely little international jobs. Yeah. You know, heading some international agency, somewhere at the UN, where you basically get to travel around for free and everyone hails you and it's all on expenses. Exactly. You pay 300-400 grand a year. You
can buy your own 4 grand umbrellas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Lovely jubbly. Sadly, this all came out. Is it remotely convincing that she knew nothing?
I mean, ultimately, you don't know. I don't know. It's only Nicola Sturgeon and those around know. But it stretches credibility, to use one of those journalistic weasel words, to think that Peter Murrell was amassing this immaculate collection of overpriced fountain pens, salt and pepper shakers, women's umbrellas. I mean, where was he keeping all of this stuff that she didn't notice it when they returned to the family home?
Well, the motorhome was on his mum's driveway.
That is true.
Which no one noticed when they visited.
Exactly. What's that? Doesn't matter. It's insane, just the sheer amount of volume of things that he seems to be getting delivered to the various kind of family properties that she would not have noticed at some point. And I think especially because she not only has gone on this I saw nothing, I heard nothing routine recently, but previously she was on record before the investigation, before Operation Branchform began, talking about how the S&P's finances were in great health, that anyone making questions about where the money was going was essentially being disloyal.
Or traitors. She accused people like the SNP MSP Joanna Cherry of being a traitor.
Exactly. How could she say that so categorically if she was blissfully unaware of
Well, exactly. And she was responsible for signing off of the accounts. Fundamentally, she was legally responsible as the leader of the party. And this is the thing. You have two people at the top. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon had been there. She'd been Deputy Foreign Minister under Alex Salmond from 2004. And then she was SNP leader for a very long time. Her husband was Chief Executive. We've got Scottish politics. I mean, it's a little world, and everybody knows everybody. And again, in the media as well, a lot of very, independence-minded media editors, editors of Scottish newspapers and perhaps a lot of people just, turning a blind eye. But we know about the thing about this is it's not just a betrayal of Scottish media. I mean, sorry, apologies, of the Scottish National Party. This is a betrayal of Scottish voters. They raised £600,000 in a campaign from ordinary people. There'll be people there who, struggling with their money, but they believe in Scottish independence. They wanted to help the party campaign for a second referendum. 600 grand was raised. Well, no, actually more than that was raised. And 600 grand went missing. They raised, just went missing. 400 grand he's pleaded guilty to. Who knows what happened to the rest of it? But at one point, they had this massive fund, and yet there was only 97 grand in it. Well, and everyone, well, hold on a minute, where did the money go? And as one of our callers pointed out, David, he was saying about, you have to match the invoices to the expenditure. Where are the invoices? Have you sent out a load of leaflets? Okay, well, where's the printing invoice? Where's the invoice that shows that? And yet, an awful lot of the things he purchased, he wasn't doing dodgy deals, drugs or artwork on, on the dark web. He was buying stuff online. The receipts, he was having stuff sent from Amazon to Nicola Sturgeon's parents. Did they not wonder when this stuff was turning up? Also, do you remember when we had remember that amazing, shocking news when we had the police surrounding their house and they were basically, a forensics team at their house, and everyone was going, wow, that's not a very... I mean, no offence to anybody, but it wasn't the most glamorous big house. This couple had both been on good 100+ grand salaries for a while. And there was this house, but it's not like it's got an east wing and a west wing. I mean, where were they keeping these? There were 4 coffee machines totaling 9 grand.
You would
where
notice
were you keeping them
on
all?
the kitchen countertop, wouldn't you?
I'd be like, why is there another sodding coffee machine? But here's my thing: is I think it's perfectly possible. There are plenty of men who do not notice what women buy. I'm sorry, your average straight bloke is literally like, oh, I don't know. I think it's perfectly feasible my husband could be at home for 2 or 3 hours without noticing that I was like, I dyed my hair blonde and I was wearing a fur coat, and he'd be going, what's for dinner? I genuinely think he's perfectly capable. He walks in, I'm going, that's a new shirt. Oh, I reckon if he was buying 4 grand watches, I think I'd notice if my husband walked in with a new 4 grand watch.
You would think.
Certainly an 80 grand Jaguar parked in the driveway.
That's the other thing. These things are
haven't got a driveway, but if we did have a driveway, I'd notice a car in it.
These things are not subtle. I mean, as you were saying earlier, if this money was being embezzled, squirreled away in offshore accounts, being spent on debauched trips to Las Vegas or whatever, there would almost be less of a paper trail than what he's been doing here. I mean,
also, wouldn't that have been more fun, Peter Murrell?
Well, that's the other thing. That's the damning indictment in all of this, is that Peter Murrell had the opportunity to be properly corrupt, and what did he do? He bought 4 grand women's umbrellas. What does that say about the character of the man? If you're going to stray from, the high morals of public office, at least have some stories to tell.
I know, genuinely, I think that's the most important. Wasn't it 240 quid on 2 umbrellas?
Yeah, I'm making
what do those? This is the thing. It's like the salt and pepper shaker, right? What do they do? What, you salt out? I mean, what? I don't understand. What does that umbrella do? More than just a normal umbrella.
Peter? Tell us. How much joy did it bring you to buy those things? It's incredible. And it was also incredible, and by which I mean it's not credible, is that Nicola Sturgeon just didn't notice any of these things. And also because they were such a unit, throughout their entire time in Scottish politics.
They were in the same... I mean, they literally went to work together.
He was the chief executive of the party for 20 years, for which she was very high-ranking, and then the leader and First Minister. The fact that all of this was going on and she was blissfully unaware of it, she would have to have been willfully blind to it, but only in the sense that she wanted to kind of keep those things separate. In case
as I suggested earlier, I mean, she's like Saint Nicola to an awful lot of people. She's been treated as saint, absolute kid gloves, soft-soaped by everyone in the media, and I'm thinking, frankly, by the police, I would say. My only explanation is that she was dead the whole time, and we just didn't know that, so you have to be dead to be sainted. That would explain it all. But abject failures over lockdown, far worse even than Boris Johnson. Again, as one of our callers pointed out, this is the woman that thought to get more air into Scottish classrooms, they would cut 6 inches off the bottom of the doors of the classrooms. This is how insane this was, and yet Boris Johnson is the one who's castigated. She was far worse and far more totalitarian. But no, none of it adds up. But she's claimed, A, that she cooperated with inquiries. We are reliably informed, I think, by people who know that she simply said no comment. Yep. Well, that's not cooperating fully, as far as I think most of us consider. But also, she absolutely knew absolutely nothing. Again, I just don't think anyone is remotely convinced by that. And she says also through a statement through her lawyers that she's been cleared of any wrongdoing. Well, she hasn't. She hasn't gone to trial. She hasn't been convicted of any crime, but she also hasn't been charged with any crime. The decision by the police was there was no evidence for her. Now, again, that's the judgment the police are making. Do we know if that was the right judgment or not? I have no idea. I'm not saying she's guilty of doing any of this. I think it's highly unlikely she didn't know, at which point I don't understand how she could possibly not be charged with a crime. I think this suggests, I think for a lot of people, there'll be a lot of people questioning whether or not the police are a little bit too cosy with the SNP in Scotland. I'm sorry, that's what people are going to think.
And hopefully this will be the point at which the halo of St Nicola shatters forever. She already destroyed her reputation as a supposed proud feminist with her insane gender recognition reforms. She has now, I think, utterly destroyed the idea that while she spent a lot of time posturing against Tory misrule and corruption, and they're the worst people who have ever possibly run a government, this very sorry story shows that when you are so dominant in a political system as they were up in Scotland,
it's dangerous.
Corruption and bad behaviour can creep in around the edges.
Absolutely.
So I think the image is her reputation amongst the media and amongst the opinion forming set has been totally revised now, and rightly so. And what she's left with is a record in government, which is also one of failure, to be perfectly
honest. Education top priority, that worked out well as well, didn't it? They took one of the best education systems in the world and totally ruined it, Well, look, let's also talk about, there's breaking news on this story, this horrific case that emerged of these 2 teenage boys convicted of rape at the age of about 15, of a 15-year-old girl and a 14-year-old girl, and a third teenage boy convicted of basically abetting this crime, videoing it, recording it on their phones, sending it out, posting it on social media. I mean, that's how dumb these kids are. One of the girls raped with a knife. They were given basically no sentence whatsoever. To all intents and purposes, certainly no time behind bars. Now, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, was asked to look at this and whether or not this was an unduly lenient sentence, whether it should go to the Court of Appeal. It's just been announced that Lord Hermer, he says he will refer this to the Court of Appeal. It's been reviewed by the Attorney General, Lord Hermer. So he's not wrong about everything. And the sentences in that rape case will be going to the Court of Appeal. But as we heard from the crime and justice writer, David Shipley, that actually the sentencing guidelines in this case are the problem. Now, the 15-year-old has incredibly bravely spoken out in interviews over the weekend, talk about how basically being in court and then finding out these boys were basically told, well, you've got low IQ. They're thick as 2 short planks, basically. They don't really understand what's wrong or what's not, but they behaved really well in court. One of them's got ADHD. I mean, well, that narrows it down to 20% of the male population, doesn't it, apparently? And that these kids, therefore, they've been given lenient sentences, as in just simply nothing. I mean, let's put nothing. They basically haven't been spared any custodial sentence. We're basically giving licence under these sentencing guidance, which basically look for an excuse, look for a reason, look for a justification for anyone who commits a crime, and basically makes an excuse. Oh, they're young, or they're stupid, or they've come from Africa. These kids, that's not what we're saying in this case. But we often hear these cases of these kids, or these young men, they commit a sexual assault, but then the judge says, but you didn't understand that it was wrong to sexually assault a 14-year-old girl, because that apparently is the norm in your country. I mean, we're just giving free rein to bad behaviour, dangerous, predatory, criminal behaviour by letting people off.
And especially on the excuses that were being made for them. If you're so dumb that you don't know it's morally abhorrent wrong to rape a young woman at knife point, that makes you more dangerous, if anything, than the alternative. I think that it's worth recognising that often these cases are not simply a judge who's gone totally over their skis and made a crazy decision. You do look in sentencing guidelines, it's pretty shocking, the latitude for leniency, even in the most serious cases. And I think there has just been a bit of a sort of overcorrection. Of course, the rights of those who are accused should be sacrosanct. People shouldn't be, again, in any way presumed guilty or treated excessively on the basis of just because a particular crime is particularly horrific or emotive or what have you, or there's a political interest in it. But at the same time, when you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, sort of serial murder, really depraved crimes, it's quite clear to me that the usual considerations around whether you should be lenient because of this context, whether or not there should be more room for rehabilitation in that context, just don't apply. From the simple commonsensical basis that if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
But this is
I don't want to take that risk.
Exactly. David Shipley was pointing out earlier that actually, you know, all of these sort of these mitigating factors are actually aggravating factors. They should if these kids genuinely, you know, and they are kids. Everyone involves a kid. I mean, this is absolutely travesty. If they genuinely don't know that raping a girl at knife point, and even worse, you know, not even worse, adding to the crime by filming it, if they don't know that all of these things are wrong. Then by definition, we need them off the streets because they are a danger to the next girl. And I'm so impressed that that girl being, I mean, but the thing is, getting raped is bad enough. Reporting it to police, going through all of that, going through, you know, being questioned and you know, having to go through it or live it all again, and it takes ages to come to court, living through all that, being that brave, getting a rape convictions, again, very hard to get because often there's no evidence. Well, luckily these horrible little scroats filmed it, so there was clear evidence. And then nothing to happen, as this girl says, like having a rock, you know, thrown in my face. I mean, it cannot happen. But again, it's, as we say, it's not a one-off. It's not a one-off. People are not being sent to jail for long enough. And if they don't understand what they've done is wrong, I need them off the streets. If they do understand what they've done is wrong, they will accept a punishment. And this whole idea, I didn't want to unnecessarily criminalise, you know, give these people a criminal record. No, you don't unnecessarily give a rapist a criminal record. It's not statutory rape. It's not a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old having consensual sex, but legally they're not allowed to. They raped a girl, you know, under a bridge, you know, at knife point. That's not the same thing. They need to be criminalised. And it is extraordinary that the people... Who are the people becoming judges if they think that that's an appropriate punishment? It defies belief that they think that that's an appropriate punishment, some sort of procedural order rather than time behind bars.
No, absolutely. It raises a lot of questions about just how warped our justice system has become.
Really
because it's punishing excessively people for things that really shouldn't be crimes. Meanwhile, things which are crimes, which we all agree are horrific and should frankly face the full force of the state and the law, are being let off so lightly. I mean, this is what enrages people, is that they see violent crime, even depraved sexual violent crime, being treated in this way. Meanwhile, things that frankly shouldn't be the state's business at all, speech and so on.
They're involved all the time.
You know, they'll send the police round and whack them with sentences.
But this idea that you don't want to ruin these boys' lives. What about those girls' lives? I mean, I'm sorry. I know women who've just had an unfortunate sexual encounter, nothing so horrific as this, and it has damaged them beyond anything all their lives. To be raped, you know, at the age of 15 by two boys, I mean, how unbelievably terrifying that would be. These girls' lives have been ruined. I mean, they may well be survivors and they can grow stronger from it. They are damaged for life by this. This is a horrific crime. But don't damage the boys. There's something going horribly wrong. I'm genuinely, when I hear about cases of judges or magistrates who let off people who, you know, who looking at child porn, it's not child porn, it's child images of child sexual abuse, correct myself, or these sort of crimes. I'm sorry, I want to see their hard drives. I do. I want to see their hard drives. What are they looking at? What are they living in their life that they think that is a crime that doesn't deserve being punished by going to jail? I just do not accept that. But just that sentences in that double rape case, two different rapes, again, by the way, 2 months apart. How many other rapes have they committed that we don't know about? these two teenage boys spare jail. It is going to go to the Court of Appeal after being reviewed by the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, the Prime Minister has said. Let's also just talk about the Makerfield by-election. I will have to read out the names of all the candidates after this, but we're going to do it anyway. We've seen this poll at the weekend. There's a lot of stuff, by the way, about candidates, like, well, you know, the Green Party candidates had to be replaced. They're going to announce a new candidate today because of stuff they've posted on social media. Everyone's trying to turn over the Reform UK candidate over pretty much everything he's ever posted. A load of it deleted. I have to say, I mean, you know, if I were his wife, I'd be having words. But I mean, you know, he's probably not unusual. Also, by the way, Carol Vorderman, if you don't want men to write lewd comments about your posts on social media, maybe don't put out loads of videos of you gyrating and the camera is basically all based on your bum. I'm sorry, love. I'm not saying you invite it. I'm just saying, what did you expect? It's not unreasonable to expect that may be the reaction. I mean, tacky as it is, I can't read out what was written. I just can't. But the thing that really has grabbed me over the weekend was the fact you've got this poll, the latest polls, which shows that basically Labour look like they are ahead to win this election. I think at 43%, I think it was. Yeah. And you got 40% for Reform, but you got 7% for Restore, which is Rupert Lowe, who was a Reform MP and has now set up his own party, a falling out with Nigel Farage. This is a bit of a theme with Nigel Farage and people he works with, and other parties much further below. But the idea that basically splitting that right-wing vote, Restore having no chance, according to the polls, of winning that by-election, but preventing possibly Reform winning, that a lot of people are saying, come on, this is about egos. The Reform have hit out Restore leaders. They call his vanity and say it's an ego trip, and basically will allow Andy Burnham, the candidate at Makerfield for Labour, for him to win that election, and then he will be able to go on, he will be able to challenge for the leadership of the Labour Party. He'll be Prime Minister. So basically that vote being split will lead to an Andy Burnham Prime Minister. What do you make of that?
Well, I think this is clear that this is Restore supposedly doing its patriotic duty by keeping Labour in power. Whether or not this is how the by-election is going to turn out, whether or not this would be replicable across a general election, which is a fair way away and a very different kind of proposition than one high-profile race in which you can throw absolutely everything at, is different. But I'm just struck by the fact that everything that Rupert Lowe said about Nigel Farage and Reform seems doubly, triply true of himself and Restore. He said that Nigel Farage and Reform, this is a one-man band. This is a party which is built entirely around Rupert Lowe's Twitter account, which we all know he doesn't even run himself. There's also the sense
and Elon Musk's support and finance.
Exactly. If it wasn't for those Elon Musk retweets, would we even be in this position? So that's an interesting side question. He also suggested that Reform were a protest party, that they weren't serious about properly governing, seizing power. Restore is never going to be able to seize power. And its historic
certainly on these polls.
Certainly on these polls. And its historic role, it seems to me, was always going to be one of two things. It would either flare up and in favour of Trace, or it would carve out a smidgen of the kind of former Reform vote and deprive Reform from certain seats in certain places, perhaps even a majority at a general election. That's the high watermark for what it could reasonably achieve, in my view, certainly in the time frame.
It could have achieved what the previous Nigel Farage parties could achieve in terms of messing up the Tories' chance of winning. Yeah, and it's also interesting that, Rupert Lowe, if memory serves, when it came to the 2019 general election, even before Farage, then leading the Brexit Party, stood down various candidates in Tory seats. He did so unilaterally because he wanted to put country before party. Do you see where I'm going with this? I think what it speaks to is that if you actually look at what Nigel Farage says and Rupert Lowe says, it's not a hell of a lot of difference, to be perfectly frank. All of the online fanboys of Rupert Lowe, different proposition. A lot of them are lunatics, to be frank. But this comes down to a personal spat, of which there are huge male egos
of
here.
which there are various claims and counterclaims on either side. Is that really worth handing power to Andy Burnham to? Probably not. I mean
that's the truth, because anyone there, again, I'm not telling anyone how to vote at all, I never have, but again, people have choices. What do you want to have a protest vote? Do you want to have a final say? But again, lots of people now tactically vote in this country, and we see on the left tactical voting. There's been talk of, like, say, for instance, the Green Party standing down their candidate, or the Conservatives being urged to stand down their candidate, or not put one up at all, so that they can be that there could be someone who's got a better chance. But it does look like it is, to all intents and purposes, a two-horse race. But both sides probably have someone holding their collar back, which could prevent them from winning.
No, exactly. And, of course, people are allowed to set up parties, people...
Oh, absolutely.
If people feel compelled to do so. But also people are allowed to criticise them when they think that this is some combination of a vanity project for the MP at the head of it and just a game for all of the excited, very online people around him who are enjoying the retweets, but certainly won't enjoy it when you hand
because that's the thing. It's not just even about egos. It's not about individual personalities. This is about the real world of who is going to be the next Prime Minister of our country, actually. I mean, this is actually... and that will make a difference in terms of policies. So this is very real. It's not in that sense. It's a very different by-election from your usual run-of-the-mill by-election where someone we hear all about what difference is Hannah, whatever her name is, with the silly hair from Gorton and Denton. Well, she doesn't make any difference to my life at all. I'm sure she's just an absolutely useless MP for Gorton and Denton, but it doesn't make a difference to my life. But realistically, one of the outcomes of this by-election in Makerfield is that we get a new Prime Minister. That's realistically what we're talking about. And that has a massive impact on the whole country. So I think we're all allowed to have a say in it. But right now, I do need to read out the list of all the candidates in Makerfield. They are Jake Austin for the Liberal Democrats, Andy Burnham for the Labour Party, Dan Clark for the Libertarian Party, Alan Howlin Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, Robert Kenyon, Reform UK, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, Green Party currently, Peter Ward, Rejoin EU, Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. There you go. Those are all the candidates. 11:28 is time. Want to hear your thoughts on anything and everything, but in particular about Nicola Sturgeon saying that she knew nothing about her husband Peter Murrell embezzling 400 grand from SNP funds to buy a motorhome, cars and other luxury items. What's your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:31 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Nigel is in London, wants to have his say on Nicola Sturgeon. Good morning to you, Nigel. Do you believe a single word that Nicola Sturgeon says?
Well, I've been drinking, so of course I believe every word that she said. Very good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
I want to talk about Nicola Sturgeon, if I can, about the internet. Look, I've only been married 4 years in July, and my wife knows everything I think. My wife knows everything I do. I don't think my wife did. If I suddenly arrived there with a £50,000 or £60,000 car, I don't think you'd say, "Oh, that's a lovely car." She'd say, "Where'd you get that from? How have we paid for it?"
Yep.
I can honestly say about Nicola Sturgeon's husband, he really isn't very smart when it comes to money. No one buys an £80,000 car. You lease it.
Right.
So
now we know.
His monetary sense isn't very, very good. So I'm sorry to say, I'm sure you realise, and anyone realises, if you're married and you're living with somebody, of course you would be, you would know if there's a change in your expenditure and a change in your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't, without being rude, is deaf and blind. I'm sorry, they cannot not know what's going on.
No, it doesn't add up. And especially, they would have known each other's incomes. I mean, for goodness sake. It's utterly bizarre, isn't it? What else did you want to say?
Well, I want to talk about the internet and about banning the internet for under 16. I don't agree with this for two reasons. Number one, any 16-year-old or 14-year-old or 50-year-old knows their way around the internet. You can get what's called VPNs to get around that. And I'm sorry to say, I think it's a bit of a fascist attitude. We had Nazis banning books, if you remember, burning books. If you want to access something, access it. But going to what you said earlier on, parental control is the key to all of this. Yeah. Turn off the internet. Tell your children what to do. Give them a book. Tell them something else.
Talk to them.
Yeah, talk to them. Let them be more involved in life and doing things, going out and seeing how things work, and just make them more intuitive about life instead of relying on nonsense on YouTube, TikTok, and wherever it may be.
Oh, absolutely. I do think, but again, I do think we need to protect children. There must be a way, but I think an awful lot of this is certainly, when you buy an item for your child, there should be, I think, the time limits, like you can only work for an hour at a time, and it doesn't work after, 10 p.m. at night or whatever. But again, this is just parents not doing their job. And I've really got no time for this. This idea that parents don't have any control. If you don't have any control of what your kid does in your home, then I'm sorry, you need to question whether, frankly, Durex should have been your friend. I've just got no time for it. Nigel, thank you for that. Peter is in Manchester. Peter, you want to talk about this news? With breaking news, we've got that Lord Herman, the Attorney General, is going to refer to the Court of Appeal this case of these two boys who were sentenced with basically no time behind bars whatsoever for the rape of two girls, two separate incidents, one involving a knife as well. What's your reaction to that?
First of all, I want to thank you for having me on. I think, with talkTV, it's a chance to maybe restore a little bit more sanity in the world we live in today.
Well, we do try, my love. What do you want to say about this case?
I'm absolutely disgusted that such a judge should be allowed to sit on the bench. That poor girl had to go through all that trauma again in court, and to have a ruling like that made, it's like a slap in the face against her. How dare he? How dare he even sit on the bench? He should be removed, and judges like that should be removed.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that front. Absolutely. Peter, thank you so much for that. 11:34 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about what on earth is going on in the Middle East with a former Pentagon official. Also going to be talking to Fiona McNenna from Sex Matters about the government's official trans guidance and how actually it poses a danger to women. Are we ever going to escape this madness? That's all coming up. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. All right, well, let's talk about, that background to an awful lot of what we talk about in this country, in particular the background to the cost of living, of course, with that oil price crisis, is the Iran conflict. What is going on there? Every single day, I think we wake up to yet more news, another tweet or a posting from the US president and some response from the Iranians. Well, we've seen the US conducting what they called self-defense strikes near the Strait of Hormuz, and we've also been told that there will possibly be a peace deal. It could involve even the Iranians handing over their enriched uranium to international bodies. But is this all really on the cards? Let's talk about this with Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt. He's a former Pentagon official and a former US Navy officer. A very good morning to you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, let's talk about these US strikes near the Strait of Hormuz. What actually happened, and is it reasonable to describe these as self-defense?
No, I think they are. I mean, what we were trying to do is eliminate their ability to stop the shipping through Bandar Abbas and through some of their missile and boat capabilities, primarily laying mines, the drones. So really just going after the things that they were continuing to use to wreak havoc in the Straits of Hormuz while we try to get to some kind of I wouldn't quite call it a peace deal. I would call it a ceasefire and a pause while we negotiate probably the single most non-negotiable issue there is, which is their nuclear program.
Yeah, indeed. Well, anyway, an awful lot of the focus on any sort of talk seems to have gone away from the initial reason for the strikes. And again, it wasn't the freeing the people of Iran from the mullahs. It was about the nuclear program. That there's no... I mean, I still do occasionally have guests who insist it's not happening, but I mean, it absolutely is. The Iranians are quite open about it, and it's clearly a threat to the Middle East and indeed to the West. But the focus now seems to be all on reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which, again, I think everyone's flabbergasted that the White House didn't appear to be consider. There was very likely that it would be closed off by the Iranians. So let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz first. We've got, I think it's 2 American aircraft carriers, huge number of other military ships out there. But we've still got those straits pretty much, to all intents and purposes, completely closed. Some couple of thousand ships, including hundreds of tankers full of oil and LNG, sitting there inside those straits, unable to get out. What would be necessary for the Americans or a coalition of the willing, we keep hearing about, for them to do to free those straits? Or is there anything they can do that could work without the Iranians agreeing to it?
Well, right now, I think the Iranians are actually playing this very brilliantly because they want to park the nuclear conversation for a 60-day period while we lift economic fury, which was the blockade, the sanctions, and other things, to give them economic relief with no real negotiation in sight in terms of whether or not we're going to come to a deal on the nuclear program. So from all intents and purposes, the Iranians are really kind of taking the high ground right now and getting us to capitulate on some of the economic stress that we put on that country.
Yeah. And again, this is about the Iranians wanting a win and survival, Trump wanting a win ahead of those midterm elections, but polling among the Republicans, potential Republican voters. But he promised to end all these forever wars in the Middle East, and has now started another one, and a lot of people are feeling the economic pain, not so much in America as in Europe and other countries, but nevertheless it is having an economic impact on the price of filling up your car, isn't it? But the idea is that he's going to end up realistically trying to sell as a win, getting back to basically exactly where we were before the war started, but just with a few more missiles shot down.
It's unfortunate, but that's kind of where this is headed. And the Iranians understand that the longer they can drag this out closer to the midterms, then the more impact it has on the president, maybe making a compromising decision that he should not make. And I think it's important to recognize the mullahs of Iran win nothing in a peace deal.
Yeah.
The only thing they win is maintaining chaotic havoc throughout the region. And without their nuclear ambitions or their nuclear program, they're really done as a regime. So this is the thing that I think the president has come to an understanding he's not dealing with rational people who care about their own people or care about even the existence of America. And in their minds, eliminating America gives them eternal peace. And so we are dealing with fanatical mullahs who you can't even register their negotiating strategy.
Well, there was kind of a view that, you know, Donald Trump is just as erratic and unpredictable as them, and then that somehow would work. But actually, the reality is they're lunatics, because they genuinely think that, you know, just ending the world would be a good thing, ending, you know, Israel, America, not caring about their own people. But actually, it is rational in its own thinking. And predictable. In terms of going back to the nuclear side of things, you know, we were told by the president a year ago in the 12-day war that they had eradicated Iran's nuclear capability. Many reports very early on, even internal reports from, you know, the State Department elsewhere, suggesting that no, that a lot of that enriched uranium had been moved before those strikes. A bit concerning that they you know, this attack somehow seemed to have come to their knowledge in advance, but. If there were a deal where they would basically hand over their enriched uranium and would promise not to develop it, is that even worth the paper it's printed on anyway? Because of, you know, the previous deals that have been done with the Biden administration, I mean, and with Obama, I mean, you know, they'll say whatever they need to say. It doesn't mean they're actually going to do any of it.
I mean, the Obama deal was probably one of the worst foreign policy deals in the history of our country, because what we allowed them to do was enrich uranium despite all the international sanctions. And once we gave them that right, we actually gave them the right to move towards a weapons program. Yeah. And they continued to trample on the JCPOA with inspections. They violated it themselves. And just because the Americans left that deal because it was a horrible deal, that did mean the Iranians could now just operate with impunity and move towards a weapon. And that's exactly what they did. And so I'm glad that the president recognized that for what it is. And I think this is the one issue. It's the nuclear program. I believe President Trump will compromise on almost every other issue if, in fact, the Iranians would give up their nuclear weapons ambitions.
But they're not going to.
They're not going to, because this is the only thing the mullahs have as leverage.
And if you were, look, you're a former Pentagon official. If you were advising either, you know, Peter Hegseth or the State Department or Donald Trump in the Oval Office, if you got in the room, what would you advise them to do right now?
I would advise them to double down on economic fury, to completely choke off the Iranian economy and give that some time. I think the one thing that we're missing right now is just a little bit of patience. Trump is worried about the midterms. The Iranians just want to drag this out because they believe closer we get to November, the more leverage they'll have. Yeah. And if we capitulate one bit on this nuclear program, we've in fact lost this campaign.
Rear Admiral Mike Hewitt, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, listening to all of that. Look, I mean, a lot of, you know, people say we don't want forever wars in the Middle East. Absolutely not. However, I don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. Is Donald Trump the president I would trust to try and deal with this? Not necessarily also. But at the end of the day, we do have an issue, do we not, in the West, where, you know, Iran, China, whoever, Russia, they are quite willing to kill their own people, have their own people killed in any war, to take any economic hit, whatever is necessary to get what they want long term. And yet in the West, we won't even take slightly higher heating bills for 20 minutes before we go, no, we can't be. We are under permanent, you know, cyber, economic, and frankly, certainly with Russians, and relatively military attack, terrorist attacks from Iran, America as well. Our unwillingness to take any pain at all to do what is necessary is a weakness, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I think that has to go hand in hand, though, with a clear plan, clearly delineated, and with a chance of success. I think the problem with a lot of forever wars, not exclusively...
I mean, this is still only a couple of months.
No, exactly. But I think the thing about the forever war, which is why I think Trump is so nervous that it might turn into one, is that it can often begin with a sense that this is going to be over quickly, that this is going to be really straightforward, and then it's not because they want it to last forever, it's because they get sucked more in and can't find a way out.
Well, Putin wanted a few days of war in Ukraine. We're now in its 5th year.
So these things, these are the nature of these things. But you're absolutely right. Some things are more important than short-term economic shocks, as painful as those can be.
I don't think we'd have fought the Second World War in this day and age.
Exactly.
People go, I don't want rations.
It is worth remembering that sometimes, war is hell, but sometimes there's something worse than that, which is not going to war and allowing a horrific power to extend its, barbarous writ onto more parts of the world. The difficulty with this war, I think, was that there was not that sense of the plan, there was not that sense of building public support for it, and then therefore the resolve amongst the Americans has unravelled quite quickly. Now they're just seemingly looking for a way out. So
it is
not a great situation.
Well, it's interesting. There's a statement issued where it says in which Mujtaba Khamenei, the Iranian supreme leader, is the son of the one who got killed. But I mean, we don't know whether it's him or not. And this guy, for all we know, is dead or in a coma, and not actually issued a statement. But someone claiming to be him in Iran has issued a statement saying American troops will have no safe haven in the Middle East. This is after those Iranian forces came under fire in the Strait of Hormuz. He vowed that regional neighbours would no longer be shields for US bases. The hands of time will not turn backwards, and the nations and lands of the region will no longer serve as shields for American bases. United States will no longer have a safe haven for its mischief and for establishing military bases in the region. Blah, 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 fill in the rest of it. I mean, just more strong words from both sides, but are we getting anywhere closer to any resolution? Right now, let's take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about, that long-awaited trans guidance that we finally got from the government last week. I mean, more than a year after the Supreme Court ruling that, we know what a woman is, and it ain't a man pretending he's a woman. But big worry from lots of campaigners that actually the trans guidance poses a danger to women. Why? Well, we'll ask Fiona McInerney from Sex Matters campaign group up next. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater also still with me. Delighted to be joined now by Fiona McInerney. She's Director of Campaigns at the campaign group Sex Matters. Good morning to you, Fiona.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, after I left the studio on Thursday, as always, these things happen, we finally, Thursday afternoon, got the government's official guidance in the wake of 13 months after the Supreme Court ruling in April last year, basically making it very clear what biological sex was, which established if it was a single-sex space and it was for women, then only women were allowed in it. Not men who think they're women or say they're women or dress as women or have a piece of paper saying they're women. Only women, which is defined as biological sex, something we all knew until 10 minutes before then, but apparently had forgotten. Now, we waited an awfully long time for guidance, lots of excuses given, but finally the Equalities Minister, Bridget Phillipson, did issue the full guidance. Now, published last week, after months of delays. Surely we should all be welcoming this, but you're worried that this is actually going to pose another risk to women. What's going on?
Well, we've given this guidance 8 out of 10. So you're absolutely right. We've waited a long time. People have used that as an excuse. And now the guidance is out. You know, it'd be great to be able to say no more excuses. And actually, on careful reading, the guidance says all the right things. It talks about, for Women Scotland's victory in the Supreme Court and what that means. If you do something that's meant to be for female people, that means female biology. You can't change it. There's only one way to interpret the word woman and the word man in the law. So all of that is good. And particularly those employers who've been using this as an excuse really need to stop now, because this was never even relevant to employers. They just need to follow the law. But you are right. There is one problem. So why do we not give it 10 out of 10? Because buried in this guidance is a somewhat trumped up notion that because a trans person doesn't want you to know that they're not really the sex they claim to be, that's rather hurtful to ask them, and you shouldn't ask them. And what's more, it might even be special category data. And so this guidance says, you know, single sex spaces are based on sex. That's all very straightforward. We've all got eyes. We can all see what sex people are. Yep. But then it says you probably shouldn't ask a trans person. And that's the problem.
Right. So basically, they don't have to divulge it. You shouldn't. It would be against the law to ask someone, excuse me, are you a man entering this woman's toilet? And that would be not allowed?
Well, the guidance is suggesting that you have to be very cautious about asking in case it's a problem. But actually, if you read closely, it says that you can ask and it's not necessarily harassment and all of that. But anyone who's looking for an excuse, or indeed those many service providers who are terrified of getting backlash from trans identifying people, because let's face it, we know that's where the trouble comes from. It's been going on for years. Any of those people may look at this section of the guidance that's headed asking about sex and think, oh dear, maybe I can't. The law is clear, but I still can't really ask.
But basically it's a get-out clause.
Well, that's how it reads, and it was not in the draft that was put out for public consultation. The Equality and Human Rights Commission that issued this guidance is not responsible for data protection or for the law in this country that covers that. And so it's really beyond their remit to be suggesting to people that this is all suddenly now very problematic to know what sex people are. And it really isn't.
Well, and we do have this thing that people, I'm always being asked on social media, well, you know, how would you even know? The idea that the vast majority, I mean, again, and people say, like, oh, what about women going into men's toilets? Yes, and I'm one of those women that when there's like a 40-mile queue for a women's toilet and there's none of the men's, frankly, right, ladies, we're going in there. But you know what? Men aren't at risk from women in men's toilets, and nearly always it's just there's a bad capacity for the different, obviously men can be much quicker at a urinal than women can be going in behind a cubicle and sitting down, etc., etc., etc. But whenever people say, like, but how would you know? How would you know these men who dressing as women or have a gender recognition certificate? The vast majority, I mean 99.9%, are very obviously men. One of the weird things about men and women is you can tell almost instantly in the dark, someone walking behind you, you can tell whether they're a man or a woman instantly. It's instinct. There's a gait, it's not just the Adam's apple, there are lots of clues. But there are some who would, what's that phrase, pass, that a man who could pass as a woman. But in that case, we wouldn't know and we wouldn't be bothered, would we? In which case...
Yes, I mean, I think the thing people are forgetting here is that for many generations, we've operated single-sex facilities and they work because everyone knows their own sex. Yeah. And it's pretty outrageous to be suggesting that men will just continue to break the rules and hope to get away with it.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that say about respect for women's boundaries and privacy and so on? It's not down to us to be policing women's spaces. It shouldn't be necessary. If these men say they are women, if they really understood what it feels like to be a woman, they would know perfectly well that they should stay out of those spaces because it's intimidating.
But then we're told, but then we'll say, if they'll say, but I pass as a woman, you wouldn't know, I wouldn't intimidate you because you would think I was a woman. Then there's a concern, a woman who perhaps might look, I don't know, might look slightly manly, and there are women. I mean, I get that all on the social media. Oh, you look like a trans. I just, good luck, guys. Have a good time. I don't care. You have fun with your abuse. It literally straight over my head. But will someone be challenged who's actually a woman? But again, that would have happened even before all of this. But we've seen the likes of the usual suspects, the Owen Joneses and others. I try not to talk about him, but every now and then he just takes it too far, saying that someone who is a trans-identified man, let's call them what they are, they're not women, who looks passably like he could be a woman, dressed as a woman, if he goes into the correct biological toilet, he will face harassment, abuse, even assault from men in those toilets, and that is a high-risk event, whereas the chance of a trans-identified man entering a woman's toilet is a low risk for assault for women. So apparently we're just supposed to put up with that, even though it's... But surely these people are identifying at this point that, yes, isn't it funny? There are men who are a risk to people who are either women or may pass as women occasionally in a darkened toilet. But actually the problem is the men.
Yeah, the problem is the men, and that's why we separate spaces, and no one can tell which men might be a threat and which ones are not.
Wait a minute, you mean they don't have rapist written on their forehead so conveniently for us to know?
So, all decent men do stay out of women's spaces, and that in itself tells you that it's a bit of a problem. I don't know why a man like Owen Jones wants to argue that certain men should get special privileges to go into women's spaces. I guess he has no idea what it's like to be a woman, and frankly, neither do they. And I think that the social contract operated for many, many years. Women are very rarely challenged in a women's toilet, but even those tall women, perhaps with short hair, who are, quickly deal with it, because as soon as they speak, we all know they're female, and we wouldn't even have that problem if men would stay out of women's spaces. So what we really need is men to change their behaviour here. Exactly. That would solve a lot of these problems.
Again, the very, very small minority of men, and again, can we all stop pretending that a lot of these men, and there are men who've got, body dysmorphia, who genuinely do believe that is I'm sorry, we used to call it a mental health disorder, that is what it is, but the vast majority are men who are getting their kicks out of the power and the ability, and they're getting a fetishist hit out of basically walking into a woman's safe space and getting their bits out. And I'm sorry, let's just call it what it is. A lot of the men who are doing this are absolutely outrageously exploiting this so-called trans rights, trans concerns, frankly, to get their rocks off.
Yeah, and the bottom line is no one can tell. And frankly, I don't want to know. I don't want to see who's had surgery or who hasn't. And what does a piece of paper matter?
Yep.
As you say, we can all easily recognise maleness, but even if we're a little uncertain, that creates, discomfort, anxiety. We don't deserve that.
If you're a man and you come in the toilet when I'm in there, I'm just saying you ain't going to be in there very long. It's as simple as that. Fiona McInerney, thank you for keeping up the fantastic work at Sex Matters. Tom Slater, this is the thing, very briefly. Decent men don't do this because they understand that this would make women uncomfortable and unsafe.
No, absolutely.
It's just that simple.
You have to question the motivations of someone who is willing to override that concern, override these age-old protections for sex-based rights.
There's a reason. But of course, but again, this thing is, if you look online, there are an awful lot of men who claim that they're women, they're dressing up as women, and they're basically getting a sexual kick out of being in women's spaces and showing that power. It's a fetish. It's a fetish for a lot of the men doing this. And I'm sorry, not in the bathroom I'm in, mate. Not in the bathroom I'm in, or indeed any of them. This is Talk, the home of common sense. So much more coming up.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, if you've missed anything from the show, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more about Nicola Sturgeon being urged to come clean over what she knew about her husband embezzling £400,000 from the SNP coffers. He pleaded guilty to that yesterday, and Labour MPs are reportedly preparing to defect to the Green Party if Andy Burnham loses the Makerfield by-election on June the 18th. Big battles going on there between Reform and Restore. We're going to be talking to Sir John Curtis, the polling expert, about all that in just a couple of moments. Plus, we're also going to be talking about Baroness Casey. She first investigated the allegations of child sexual abuse in Rotherham. She says she feels personally responsible for failing grooming gang victims. We're going to be talking to one of those victims, a survivor, Sammy Woodhouse, who's also a crucial figure in terms of exposing all of that. We're also going to be talking, as I say, more about all the other bigger stories in the news, including the Prime Minister, who has this morning issued a statement. Well, in a pool interview, he has said that there is actually going to be a Court of Appeal review into the sentencing of those two, in fact, three teenage boys, but two who have been convicted of rape of two 15-year-old girls aged 14 and 15. Many people speaking out absolutely horrified, including a government minister at the weekend, actually, over the fact that these two boys were basically not granted a single day behind bars despite their heinous crimes. The Attorney General, Richard Hermot, KC. Now, we normally boo and hiss at this point, but in this case, he's actually made the right decision. It was referred to him to basically review it and then refer it to the Court of Appeal to see if that sentence was unduly lenient. The answer, of course, is yes, it was. He said, "It's clear to me from their powerful personal statements that these girls have displayed immense bravery in coming forward. There is an epidemic of violence against women and girls in this country, and this government will not hesitate in taking action to ensure all women and girls feel safe and have confidence in the justice system." I have to say, there isn't an epidemic of violence against women and girls. It really annoys me when they say stuff like that. That is simply not the case. Things are actually much worse. But the point is, any violence of such as this absolutely needs to be dealt with. Right now, let me introduce you to Tom Slater, editor at Spiked Online. He's been joining me throughout the whole show. I'm going to talk about the Makerfield by-election in a bit more detail right now. But I just want to ask you, I do have to read out all the election candidates' names, which I will do in a few moments' time when we discuss this. But in terms of the battles we've got Andy Burnham, who is sort of still Greater Manchester Mayor, and if he does lose this by-election in Makerfield in Manchester, he will then just continue being a Greater Manchester Mayor. But if he does win, we know he's going to become an MP in Westminster. He will likely challenge Keir Starmer for the leadership of the Labour Party and, by definition, then become Prime Minister if he wins. It's very, very likely there could be a coronation, although there is some talk that there may be some other people who'd be willing to stand. If he loses, it's very likely, according to the polls, he would lose to a Reform candidate. In this case, it's Robert Kenyon. Now, the only thing that's standing, it would appear, according to the polls, between Robert Kenyon, the Reform candidate, becoming the local MP, is, according to the polls, and again, how much we trust the polls, we'll talk to our next guest about that, is the Restore Britain candidate, who is Rebecca Shepherd, because she is, according to the polls, on about 7% of the vote, and yet Reform Britain is only about 3 points behind the Labour Party. Do you think it is likelihood there will be voters who will say, you know what, I would have voted Restore, but I'm not. I'm going to vote Reform because they're the best chance of stopping Andy Burnham from returning to Westminster?
Well, I suppose there are so many caveats applied to a poll like this. I'm sure Sir John will be able to enlighten us on that. But because of the fact that Restore is such a new proposition, because of the fact that they're not going to have a ground game to the same extent, because of the fact that their name recognition is not going to be on the same level, there's all these different factors which don't make it as clear a picture. We'll find out on polling day, effectively. Yeah. But one thing that's been quite clear is that on the other side of politics, tactical voting, anti-reform tactical voting has been pretty effective. Voters quite naturally, even without a concerted campaign, working out who is the party, whether it's the Greens or whether it's Plaid or whether it's Labour, is most likely to stop Reform from getting in. The question is, are we going to see that on the right? Are you going to see voters say, actually, I'm not going to vote for Restore or Conservatives or whoever it might be in a particular seat because Reform are the only game in town in terms of keeping Labour out. So tactical voting is becoming an increasingly big part of our politics. The question is, are we going to see it on both sides of the political spectrum in quite the same way?
Very interesting. Thank you very much. Well, look, let's go to my next guest. So John Curtis is a polling expert and, of course, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. A very good afternoon to you, Sir John.
You're welcome. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this very, very, very hot day. Lots of people struggling with the heat. But I'm wondering, the heat is absolutely on in terms of this by-election, though, isn't it? It does look, according to the polls, within the error, margin of error, to be neck and neck between Andy Burnham for Labour and Robert Kenyon for Reform. And certainly when this seat was first chosen by Andy Burnham, basically, managed to get someone who was willing to stand down, Josh Simons, the existing candidate, stand down, so there'd be a by-election. To NEC agrees for him to stand, so he's got a chance of being an option for the next Labour leader. But this was very much the local elections Reform territory, and looks on polling to be good Reform territory. Is it the case that, as the polls stand right now, Andy Burnham would win unless the votes on the right, Restore, Tories maybe, and Reform coalesce together with tactical voting?
Well, frankly, we don't know. Let's go back very slightly, Julia. That was a very long question with lots of supposition.
I'm trying to put the background in. Yeah.
We have had one one small opinion poll that interviewed 500 people, of just under 400 declared a voting intention. And the company in question, Survation, say they're going to be carrying on polling, and we can look for further instalments. Yeah. It does tell us two things, that if indeed it is at all right, that indeed Andy Burnham is competitive in a constituency in which, as you already pointed out, in the local elections, Labour were 20 points behind. And when indeed the same poll suggests that if you just ask people how they would vote if there were a general election tomorrow, that Labour would be 11 points behind. Right. So crucially, Andy Burnham's
it's a personal vote.
Yeah, his gamble is that his personal vote, which is already demonstrated in elections for the Manchester mayoralty, would indeed translate into this constituency, even though he's rather keen on the EU, and even though this is a constituency where 2/3 voted in favour of leaving the EU. So that's point one. Point two, however, beyond it suggests that, frankly, it is going to be a two-horse race, and that already there has been, you can call it tactical voting, you can call it a squeeze or whatever, it's been going on both sides. So according to this poll, nearly 2/3 of the people who voted Conservative in 2024 are now saying they're going to vote for Reform, but equally support for the Greens is clearly down in this poll when they're asked whether they're going to vote for Andy Burnham or Peter Kenyon or whoever, as opposed to what they would do in a general election. So there's already been some squeezing on both sides of the fence. But yes, as you point out, the interesting thing about this poll is that Restore Britain were credited with 7%. And yes, indeed, if you were to add that to the Reform tally, then rather than Reform being slightly behind, they'd be slightly ahead. Actually, I think one of the ways to think of it is this. If you actually add up, according to this poll, the total votes for Reform and the Conservatives and Restore Britain, and the total votes for Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, it's a 50-50 shot. In other words, it looks as though this is a very competitive constituency where, as it were, the right and the left are going to be of roughly equal size. And yes, it might in the end prove being crucial as to which side managed to squeeze more successfully. But of course, one poll, much more to come,
absolutely,
much more campaigning to come, etc., etc.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much for explaining all of that. But that is the interesting thing, and again, margin of error and the people you select. But in terms of, when we're often told, you will usually by the losing party in any by-election, usually a sitting government. Look, by-elections are snapshots. They're about local issues. They're not necessarily about they're a protest vote. But because this is about electing somebody who could realistically is expected to be the next Prime Minister of this country, it's taken on a much bigger significance. Do you, in terms of what people are voting, I mean, will people, not say local elections, people seem to be voting on issues like Gaza rather than their bins being collected, which I think a lot of people will find quite bizarre. But in terms of what is actually dictating people's choices, is there any evidence? Is there any polling to suggest any evidence?
No, it's far too early, Julia. Yeah. I mean, you can speculate as much as you want, right?
Most people in Makerfield probably don't even know there's a by-election on.
Well, that'll be true to some degree. At the end of the day, I mean, Andy Burnham will be hoping to appeal to people who voted Labour in 2024, including many of those who've subsequently fallen out of love with the party, and he'll be hoping that by his personal popularity will help him to overcome the current unpopularity of his party. Clearly, Mr. Kenyon on the Reform side will be hoping to profit from the fact that Reform are a lot more popular than they were back in 2024, when they still managed to get nearly a third of the vote in this constituency. So, I mean, what this poll is saying they're at about 40% certainly seems to be realistic. Yeah. He will be hoping the popularity of Reform, the popularity of Nigel Farage in what is a heavily pro-Brexit area. And we know, I mean, the local elections confirmed very, very clearly that Reform by far and away are much more successful in places that voted heavily for Leave than they are elsewhere. So, I mean, those are essentially the principal forces that are going to primarily
and is, you know, it's interesting when that first emerged, when we knew there was going to be a case, and people say, oh, it's not about Brexit, and then of course we had all these front page stories about Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham and whether they wanted to rejoin the EU, and a lot of commentators online saying, look, Brexit isn't an issue anymore. Now, it's not Brexit as such as an issue, but this is still the big dividing line in British politics, isn't it?
Yeah, the point is that Brexit and how you voted in the EU referendum is a signifier of a wider set of attitudes. So essentially, the folk who voted for Brexit are what we might call social conservatives or anti-woke folk. These are the folk who are particularly concerned about immigration, who are sceptical about equalities policies, and who say Britain shouldn't be apologising for its past, and its role in slavery and the empire and all the rest of it. At the other end of the spectrum are the social liberals, some of whom at least think we actually need more migrants, who are certainly in favour of equalities policies that, for example, might make it easier for trans people to be able to get legal recognition of their gender. And they are the folk who is willing to question Britain's past and its role in slavery. This is a big cultural divide. Yeah. It's become now as important in shaping how people vote as is the traditional division between left and right, which is still there, whether or not you want a more or less, whether you think more equality is more important or trying to pursue economic growth is more important. Both these things are now part of our politics, but there are two dimensions which, for the most part, whether you're left-wing or right-wing, it shows no relationship with whether or not you're a social liberal or social conservative. Yeah. And this is one of the reasons why it's making it much more difficult for both Labour and the Conservatives, who, by the way, irrespective of what happened in this by-election, both suffered terrible results on May the 7th, record lows for both of them. Yeah. It's why both of them are struggling, because they're now finding it much more difficult to bring together the big coalitions that historically they've been able to join. Our politics, therefore, has become very, very fragmented.
Going outside of this by-election, there's always reports, and I can remember this, 2010, coalition government, it's the end of two-party politics. And then, of course, Tories won a majority in 2015, and then, snuck back in 2017. 2019, definitely the end of, multi-party politics. Tories won that big by-election. Labour are destroyed for a generation. Labour get it. Tories destroyed for a generation. Everyone seems to talk about things in a very sort of apocalyptic ways, big sort of generational changes. It does seem to me that I try not to make too many predictions as a result of everyone else's predictions being wrong all the time, that actually we have no way of knowing how people are going to vote in the next general election. We've got no way of knowing how people will vote in an election in the next couple of weeks almost, because things are so up in the air. Are there any very clear and obvious, other than, as you said, that Brexit dividing line being a giveaway about other attitudes, which might indicate voting intention? Are you of the view that, we have moved away from that two-party, that we are looking at maybe the destruction of the biggest, oldest parties and new parties taking over? Are we moving into a new British politics, or is it too early to tell?
Well, the short answer to your question, it is too early to tell, but I think what is clear is that it is an important question to ask. There is no doubt, and the results on May the 7th in Scotland, Wales and in England all point in the same direction, that the challenge to the traditional Conservative Labour duopoly that has largely dominated British politics is now the most serious challenge that is ever faced. It's much more important than the rise of the Liberal SDP alliance in the 1980s. And at the moment, both parties are performing at record low levels of electoral popularity. Now, things might be turned around, but certainly, the fact that our politics is no longer about left versus right is one reason why it may be more difficult to turn around. The other crucial one is that the traditional anchor of the Conservative Labour duopoly, that is that middle-class people tend to vote Conservative and working-class people tend to vote Labour, that's gone out of the window, and it's not been restored in the post-Brexit world. So certainly some of the things that were the underpinnings of that traditional two-party system are no longer with us. But where we go from here, yes, it's very, very uncertain. But the point is, we at least know that it's uncertain.
Hey, it keeps us both in a job. Let's not complain, Sir John.
Well, that's true. That's true.
God forbid if it was all obvious and certain. Just one final question. Big stories today. I mean, of that guilty plea yesterday from Peter Murrell, the now estranged husband of Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister of Scotland. I won't go into the who believes what about people not knowing about new cars and salt and pepper shakers and things and the like. But how much does this damage the SNP brand and the independence, I suppose, campaign in Scotland, if at all?
Well, I think there are a few points we can make. One is that the original arrest of Peter Murrell, now quite some time ago, and all those photos of the police tents outside the then joint home of him and Nicola Sturgeon, absolutely made no difference at all to the SNP standings in the poll, although the subsequent arrest of Sturgeon did. To what extent people in Scotland are learning anything new now? Yeah, sure, it's now been confirmed, but the fact that Mr. Murrell was being charged has been known for quite some considerable time. What I think, however, is true is that the SNP have been finding it difficult to raise money for their campaigning during the course of the last few years, and certainly I think what it will be wanting to do is to try to assure potential donors, including members, and the SNP has lost a lot of members in recent years, that indeed that their money will be used for the purposes for which it was given. Now, the original complaint was about something completely different, and it seems as though, from what we can judge, that in a sense, that while the original complaint didn't get very far, on the way the police found that Mr. Murrell was embezzling the SNP. Well, I think we will find out more about the circumstances behind his behaviour in two further judicial hearings to take place next week. Shall we say, at the moment, I suspect many people might be saying the behaviour seems somewhat unusual and might be asking themselves what lies behind it.
Very interesting. Sir John Cook, it's always so good to talk to you, polling expert, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we will be taking your calls on Nicola Sturgeon. I've been asking you today. She claims she knows nothing about her husband, Peter Murrell, embezzling 400 grand's worth of SNP funds to buy a motorhome, a car, 2 cars, including, by the way, an 80 grand Jag. You'd never notice that appearing on your driveway, would you? Never query it. And other luxury items. What's your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say on that. Calls are charged at the national rate. But Tom Slater's still with me, editor of Spiked Online. I want to go back to the Makerfield by-election because, I mean, the stories that have been coming out of that, it's just extraordinary. I mean, there's one interesting poll here saying, or suggestion actually from two former ministers, Jess Phillips. The worst thing about Jess Phillips resigning from her job in the Home Office is that Jess Phillips is now free to do more interviews, which means we're going to see more of Jess Phillips.
There was a blessed reprieve there.
It was, wasn't it? I know. But she said, and along with another minister as well, even if Andy Burnham doesn't win in Makerfield, there will be a change of Prime Minister. Many expect that, and it's very likely actually that there may be the likes of Richard Bergen and others who might, on the left, challenge. I'm now going to have the annoying thing of trying not to sneeze while I'm
It's the point at which Richard Bergen comes up.
Apologies, I'm allergic to Richard Bergen. But I mean,
so would the country be, I think, if he was
I think so. If they knew.
God bless him.
But this thing that Starmer's over, there's no doubt at all. There's talk about Keir Starmer going up to Makerfield to actually campaign on behalf of Andy Burnham, which is hilarious because the whole point of Andy Burnham standing is to try and oust Keir Starmer. I mean, this is going to be a very amusing few weeks. But a lot of the focus so far has actually been on this Reform candidate, Robert Kenyon, and his social media posts. Very lewd comments that I can't possibly report on a family station such as us. Very sexual comments, a lot of it quite sexist, quite and he's talking about, women just get abortion for cosmetic reasons, use it as contraception. Well, there are women who use it as contraception. I'm sorry, that is the reality. But very disparaging comments. Now, a lot of his social media was deleted. There's been a lot going on about it. I mean, again, we saw, didn't we? We've got a new, I mentioned earlier, one of the Green Party candidates, Sarah Wakefield, replaced the last one because of inappropriate social media stuff, about the ambulance attack in Golders Green being a fake flag affair. I mean, this is much more worrying to me and dangerous than someone saying what they want to do to Carol Vorderman's bottom, which is one of the messages. Do the messages from Robert Kenyon, do the post messages, a lot of those are replies to people, but they're on public social media. Do they in any way, do you think, impact his ability to appeal to voters and make? Is there an element where, like, he's just a bloke, he's a plumber, what did you expect? He's not worried, he's not being careful what he's writing, and actually a lot of his comments are, they're just sort of things that blokes might say to each other in the pub, and if he said it in the pub it'd be all right, but he said it on social media. Or did they suggest, as opposite parties have said, that he's unfit for public office?
I think that's absurd. I mean, the comments that we're talking about here probably wasn't well advised to put.
Wasn't just one. I mean, there's a lot of them.
But this does basically come down to the sort of risque joking that you would normally see in the pub, in a private WhatsApp group.
I found myself laughing.
Among friends. And yet when it's presented in public, and particularly when there's a political axe to grind, everyone pretends to clutch their pearls and pretend this is aberrant behaviour indicative of a very sick mind. We know that that's not the case.
And also that the people who often do that are often, when you see their WhatsApp messages from some Labour Party group, are just absolutely horrific.
Yeah, this is just, I mean, it's not an exaggeration.
Isn't it just bants?
It basically is. It might not be to your taste. It might not be the sort of thing that you or I would normally engage in. But that is what it is. And I think if we're going
I definitely write messages like that, just not about Carol Vorderman's bottom.
And you should tell all in the next hour. But I think it's, if we're going to create a standard whereby anyone who is ever on social media, public social media, said things of this nature cannot stand, then you're cutting out vast ways of ordinary people who just don't, in their day-to-day life, subscribe to the sort of pearl-clutching speech codes of polite society. And
it's very interesting, isn't it? When we've had, say, Boris Johnson, all his affairs, stuff that Donald Trump has said and done. He's like, voters have made it very clear again and again and again. They don't care. They don't care where someone went to school. They don't care what they said as a teenager. They don't care about whether or not they're faithful to their wives, or they don't care about someone saying rude words on social media. They literally don't care. I mean, that's it seems to be very, very clear from people who get elected. What they care about is, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? And that's what it comes down to.
That's rational. You're not electing this person.
You're not going to marry him.
No, exactly. You're not going to marry him. You're not electing him to be your religious advisor. This is someone who is standing on a particular platform. Do you trust him to follow through on that platform? Do you agree with that platform? That's all it basically comes down to. What he happens to find funny in the privacy or the not-so-privacy of his own social media feeds is not really that important, is it?
But when people delete their social media, it's fascinating. Now, you can't delete stuff. It's out there forever. Don't bother deleting it. Just leave it there.
No, exactly.
I've had people say, but I've got a row about something on social media. People say, you haven't even had the decency to delete it. I'm like, I'll tell you, if I delete it, you'll be here within 5 minutes saying, oh, and she's trying to cover it up by deleting it. You can't win. You can't win. I mean, maybe if you're thinking about going to public office, you might be a bit more careful. But here's the thing. I don't really want people to have thought about going into public office since they were 15 years old going to public office. I want somebody who's done a real job, whatever it is, whatever party, and then going, yeah, do you know what? I think I've got something useful to add to political debate. What do you make, and we discussed it earlier, but people who are just tuning in terms of these battles, and it's really turned very bitter between Restore and Reform. And we get the massive egos of everyone involved. If you are the leader of a political party, you have a massive ego because you think you're the best person in that party and you're the person to become Prime Minister. I don't think there's anything wrong with people having a massive ego if they've got something to back it up. But there is an issue, there's no doubt at all, and I'd say this to his face, Nigel Farage, he has a lot of fallings out with people. His party is, it's my way or the highway. And his view is, and I think is understandable, he's been right about an awful lot of things about what voters want and what they believe, and he's made the right decision many, many times. One thing he thinks he did make the wrong decision on was standing down candidates in 2019 and allowing Boris Johnson to get that massive majority and then to get Brexit done. And he regrets that. He wants to destroy the Tory party, makes no bones about it. We've all been focused on whether or not the Tory party and the Reform party should form a coalition at the next government or whatever. Talk about the people saying that the Conservative party should not even stand a candidate. And this latest poll, we don't know, as John Curtis pointed out, we don't know how accurate this is. It's one snapshot poll. Could Restore have 7% of the vote under Rupert Lowe? And actually, could they prevent Reform from winning this seat and Labour basically being able to retain the seat, but Andy Burnham not just becoming the Makerfield Labour MP, but becoming the next Prime Minister, which could change. You don't know. It could end up leading to Labour's fortunes in government going up and damaging the chances of getting what I assume your average Restore voter or Reform voter or Tory voter would prefer in terms of a governmental change.
No, I think that's true. I think this by-election, the stakes are so much higher, not least because it will decide who the next Prime Minister is, effectively, and also because if you are any alternative party to the Labour Party, you should want Keir Starmer in power as long as it's humanly possible. The thing. I mean, Andy Burnham, I do think he's an empty suit. I think a lot of the praise for him is pure projection.
It's just as bad as Keir Starmer in terms of what does he believe.
Yeah, and people who are vesting so much hope in him that he's going to chart this much more left-wing course. I mean, he's U-turning on those positions as we speak. So a lot of people are going to be disappointed, but there will be a bit of a new manager bounce. People are obviously much more drawn to Burnham because, unlike Keir Starmer, he does appear to have a pulse. He's a much better communicator. He speaks human.
Wears T-shirts.
He wears T-shirts, which is another dazzling thing about him. So he will be, superficially, and for how long we don't know, good for the Labour Party.
There will be a bounce if he gets
So that's something that people need to bear in mind. And I think where Restore and Reform are concerned, Reform is the primary vehicle on the right to displace Labour, replace the Conservatives. That's not going to change. This is one poll. It's hard to work out how much Restore will be a genuine thorn in Reform's side over the next few months and years. But even if it completely outstrips all expectations, even if it wildly overachieves what this one MP and the band of, frankly, complete rank amateurs around him are capable of achieving, it will only be to shave votes off of Reform and make it easier for the Labour Party. That's just the way
that's the reality.
All this talk about Rupert Lowe is going to be our next Prime Minister is fantasy.
This is social media, again. It's like all those people who Remain voters in 2019, the campaigners on social media and on Twitter as it was then, and I've never met a Brexiteer. So the Scottish independence campaign in 2014, what happened in the general election in 2019, and Corbynistas and everything. There's an awful lot of people who live online and think that's the real world. There's actually millions and millions and millions more people quietly going, I don't think so, and doing something different. Anyway, you've got to read out the list of the Makerfield by-election candidates because we didn't mention all of them. They are Jake Austin for the Liberal Democrats, Andy Burnham for the Labour Party, Dan Clark for the Libertarian Party, Alan Howlin Lord Hope, the official Monster Raving New Looney Party candidate, Robert Kenyon for Reform UK, Rebecca Shepherd for Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield for the Green Party, Peter Ward Rejoin EU, Michael Winstanley for the Conservative Party. And there you have all your candidates. Going to take a quick break, then we're going to get to your messages and your calls. Georgina's on the line on Nicola Sturgeon. You do not want to miss that. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Martin is on the line in London, wants to talk about Makerfield and that by-election. Good afternoon to you, Martin.
Afternoon, Julia. How are you?
Very well. What do you want to say, my lovely?
Yeah, my view is, particularly with Rupert Lowe, Rupert Lowe needs to be called out for what he actually is, which is a bitter, vengeful old man with too much money. That's what this is about. He hates Nigel Farage. His whole aim of Restore Britain is basically to stop reform. That's all it is, because he's bitter and angry for the way he left the Reform Party. And, I find Restore Britain quite sinister. Whenever some of their activists come on to talk radio, they always end up making a fool of themselves. And it always seems to come down to their hatred of Islam. That's their answer to everything. Whenever one of their activists comes onto the station, it's always that. Yeah. And I think they need to be called out. And, one of them a couple of months ago when I was listening to Alex Phillips' show, and one of them was on there as a guest, and he made a complete and utter fool of himself. And I can remember Alex saying to him, well, does your party, Restore, actually have any policies? And his answer to everything was, we want to ban halal meat. That was his answer.
That's not really the solution to the problems that this country is facing. Yeah, I mean, that is sort of a bit of a one-trick pony and a one-man band is your concern, and motivated by the wrong things. Do you think that Restore could prevent Reform from winning that seat, and basically Andy Burnham will be our next Prime Minister?
Well, I hope not, but I saw that poll the other day when it was released, and I have to say, personally, I think 7% is probably a bit high.
That's interesting. And again, as Sir John Curtis says, we just one snapshot. Martin, thank you for that. Very interesting call. Thank you very much. Rupert, we did invite Rupert onto the show today, by the way, and I'd love it. If you're listening, if someone could pass this on who's a fan of his, I would love to have you on the show. I'd love to talk to you about the Makerfield by-election. Do come on the show tomorrow, Rupert. Come on, you've been on plenty of times before. Let's go back to Nicola Sturgeon. A lot of your calls coming in, a lot of your messages about Nicola Sturgeon claiming she knew nothing about her husband Peter Morrell embezzling £400,000 from SNP funds she bought. He bought a 125-grand motorhome, £80,000 Jaguar, another car, other numerous luxury items, and apparently she just knew absolutely nothing. What's your reaction to that? Well, Wesley says, I reckon Nicola Sturgeon is telling porky pies again. What a surprise. Apparently, by the way, it's defamatory to claim she did know something. I mean, feel free to sue, sweetheart. Drew says, of course she knew. He's the fool guy. Dan says, how on earth do you spend £2,000 on salt and pepper shakers? I think that's the bit that's really got us all. Clark says, as if I come home from shopping with an extra tub of Pringles, my missus wants to know what's been going on. This is so true. Mark says, I can see her nose growing. Georgie says, if he had the personal wealth to fund these purchases, then she probably wouldn't have known. Just saying. But we knew what he was earning because he was chief executive of the SNP, so that's in the public domain. Ollie says she just ignored the caravan on the drive that appeared from nowhere. Well, it was on his parents' driveway, but you think she might have asked. Tyler says she's doing a Starmer. What she means is she technically didn't ask on purpose so she could deny knowing. It's called plausible deniability. Except it's not plausible, is it? I have a funny feeling it's definitely not plausible to my next caller. Georgina is in London. Hello, Georgina. Good afternoon to you. What do you make of Nicola Sturgeon saying she knew nothing?
Well, hello and good afternoon to you, my beautiful lady, and hello to Tom. Aww. Well, I know if my husband started bringing home a lot of expensive items, I would want to know from whence they came, and I would be all over that man like an ill-fitting suit until I knew where the money had come to buy them. If Nicola Sturgeon didn't ask her other half, where did this come from regarding the numerous very expensive items coming into her home, then she is as complicit in this thievery as he is. There's a saying, Julia, never underestimate the power of denial, and Sturgeon has taken this saying to a whole new level, denying all knowledge of her husband's dodgy spending habits, pleading ridiculous plausible so-called deniability seems to be the order of the day with a lot of today's politicians, and the sad fact of the matter is they always seem to get away with it with no consequences or holding them to account for their actions. And until we start holding these people to account for their underhand dealings and handing them out some serious prison time, this kind of gross embezzlement is going to continue. I mean, governments now seem to have some kind of papal dispensation to robbers blind without taking accountability for their actions, and it's about time that these people were treated like the common man. And until this happens, this kind of gross misconduct will only continue, Julia.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, again, and people who raised this for years, like the MP Joanna Cherry, I mean, they were basically told they were traitors. They were actually used the word traitor about them when they were going, hello, all this money's been raised for this campaign for a referendum, and it's all disappeared. And in fact, it's the 400 grand he's admitted to. There's 600 grand that went missing. 400 grand he's admitted to. What happened to the other 200 grand? Big question marks there. The other issue, people go, was she living at home? There's the question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. Lil say right now, the FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here. And thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at talkSPORT are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England v Croatia live on June the 17th, with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and your very own Adidas official match ball try-under, be it England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:40 is the time. Let's talk right now about, well, I say so many young people being failed by these reports into the grooming gangs. And Baroness Casey, of course, carried out that rapid review for Keir Starmer that meant that wanting a grooming gang public national inquiry was no longer simply, as he called it, jumping on a far-right bandwagon. It was something that was absolutely necessary. And one of the many survivors that Baroness Casey did meet with is my next guest. Baroness Casey now then says that she wished she'd done more and feels that she has failed the survivors and the victims of those child gangs. Well, let's talk to Sammy Woodhouse. She's an activist and survivor of the Rotherham child sexual exploitation scandal and joins us once again. Good afternoon to you, Sammy.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thank you, as always, for joining us. Really appreciate that. It's interesting, isn't it, that I'm thinking Baroness Casey is kind of, she's one of the goodies. She's one of the people who actually has listened to survivors and victims and has actually said, no, something needs to be done. Do you think that she failed grooming gang victims?
I think her remarks were quite interesting because I met with Louise when she came into Rotherham, you know, well over a decade ago, and I've spoken at events with her, so I have met her on multiple occasions. And, you know, she was one of the few people within government that was actually having this conversation. Now, do I think people like her and other people in government could have done more? Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. We know now that, you know, people like myself, my generation of people, have been failed. And the thing is, you know, we're having the exact same conversations what I was having 14 years ago. What I want to see now, and I think what a lot of us want to see, is accountability. We want people to be fetched to account. Now, yes, we've been failed as a generation of people, but this is happening to children now and today, and you know they're now being failed as well. I want to start and have conversations about what they're doing and what they should be doing. You know, we need to be working in schools and getting the education done properly so that children actually know what grooming these gangs are. How can they spot the signs? Who do they report this to? The sentencing is absolutely shocking, as we've heard from a recent case this week when they was found guilty, and you know the judge actually praised them. Now
the two 15-year-old boys, it wasn't a grooming gang in this case, but nevertheless, two 15-year-old teenage boys. But they behaved nicely in court, so obviously they shouldn't go to prison.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my activism is more around child sexual exploitation, children born of rape. However, all children of all forms of abuse should be acknowledged and safeguarded. And as I say, you know, we're not doing enough. The sentencing, you can actually be sentenced to life for rape. It never gets applied.
It never does. And we often see cases, and this happened again last week, where there'd be a grooming gang. They say, oh, I've been sentenced to, you know, 270 years or whatever. You think, oh, that sounds impressive. And when you actually look at, you know, it's 18 men and someone's got 27 years, someone's got 20, a lot of people have got 10, but they only serve half that, if that, third of that, quarter of it even sometimes. But also, crucially, I mean, per rape, they're serving about, I don't know, a day behind bars. In America, you get sentenced for that stuff. You don't serve it concurrently. You get 25 years for each one. You come out in a box. And I'm sorry, if you have committed rape, multiple rapes and multiple victims, why would you ever be allowed out of prison?
Exactly. I mean, I personally think we should have the death penalty. I know the Labour government aren't going to bring that in. However, you know, we've got the sentencings there. They could, you know, apply that. We definitely need more prisons because, you know, there's that many paedophiles and child rapists, you know, where can we even put them? The child rape scale is off the scale that much because they allow it to happen. They are normalising paedophilia. And, you know, that's been the case for a very, very long time.
Absolutely. Sammy, I'm just going to stop you there because your line's just corrupting a little bit. I'm going to get them to just try and sort that out while I just talk for a second. But I mean, this is the thing. It's not just about accountability, is it? About the you know, sentences. Well, first of all, arresting and then charging and prosecuting and then convicting these grooming gangs, these rapists, you know, mass rapists. But it's also about the accountability for the huge numbers of police officers, social workers, the people working in care homes, the local councillors, so many other people who were aware of it and didn't do anything. Local MPs, everybody. I mean, Tom said, just while we get that line cleared up, because we do want to hear what Sammy, which is the most crucial voice on this issue, not ours. But lots of people come to this as if it's like a new story, but it's a new facts emerging about something that happened 20 or 30 years ago. A, it's still happening now, as Sammy points out, today, and B, we've known about this for years. And the people in charge knew about it for years, and people did nothing. And the fact that we're still having to talk about it, I find mind-blowing. And I don't feel, other than the fact that we see cases take a long time to go to court, they shouldn't, but they do. We're seeing more and more men being put behind bars. But as Sammy says, they ain't serving the sort of sentences most people would consider to be justice.
No, exactly. And you will often see them presented in the media as grooming gang has received, you know, 150 years collectively in prison. You break it down, 4 years here, 5 years there, 6 years there, 10 years there. I think to most people, if anyone was involved in one of these depraved gangs, subjecting young girls, the most vulnerable in society, to what amounts to kind of sexual torture, really. That these people would just not be put away for the rest of their days.
I'm not in favour. I mean, Sammy, we're still trying to get Sammy's line back up. Could we perhaps try and just have Sammy on the phone, just so we get her voice, because that's what's the most important thing. And again, I'm not in favour of the death penalty in terms of there's no evidence it acts as a deterrent. But I'm remarkably relaxed about people getting the death penalty for this. I've got to be honest with you. I would not be in the streets campaigning against it. I really wouldn't. And I think the vast majority of people go, oh, OK, well, again, I'd rather have them behind bars their entire lives and frankly, having a not very nice time works for me. But if there's a choice between them being out again in 8 years' time or 5 years' time and them being hanged, I'll take hanged every time. Oh, we're really struggling. We cannot get Sammy back. No, I'm so sorry. Sammy, if you're on the line, I'm so sorry. Just the line it became understandable and your voice is so important. I promise we'll get you on again very, very soon. I so appreciate you coming on the show and I do apologise that we had that tech breakdown there. But Baroness Casey, it seems to me she's been one of the goodies, Tom.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And I think not only did she look into this issue completely without the blinkers of political correctness, which many people before her had failed to do. Also, the extent to which she is continuing to talk about this issue, continuing to feel like she hasn't measured up, I think reflects well on her. Because ultimately, what can we do to deliver justice to people who've been failed for generations now? And there are cases in this country of both a mother and daughter being subjected to the same form of abuse. That's how far back this goes.
It's just so repulsive, isn't it? We're going to take a quick break and then we are actually going to return to Nicola Sturgeon, the Manuel of Scottish politics. I know nothing about her husband's embezzlement of £400,000 of SNP funds. We're going to be talking to a Scottish political correspondent, John Boothman. This is Talk.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure.
Hello and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:51 is the time. Let's return to the extraordinary story of Nicola Sturgeon and her wonderful impression of Manuel in Fawlty Towers. I know nothing when it comes to her husband's £400,000 fraud and embezzlement of SNP donated funds, the public's funds donated for campaign for a second referendum in Scotland. 600 grand missing, 400 grand apparently he embezzled, spent it on extraordinary items, including a £125,000 motorhome parked outside his mum's house on the driveway. 80 grand Jag, another car, 9 grand on four or five different coffee machines. What do those coffee machines do? They dance as well. And 2.5 grand on a salt and pepper mill. Well, let's talk about all of this with John Boosman. He's political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Good afternoon to you, John.
Julia, how are you?
Very well indeed. I mean, you know how I am? I'm much amused by this, because a lot of us have been saying, especially those of us who are long married, is what are the odds that my husband came home with a 80 grand Jag or some fancy looking salt and pepper mills or any of the other many luxury items he brought home, and I wouldn't say, where the hell did you get that from? How much did it cost? And where did you get the money from? Is her claim to not know anything, is it remotely believable?
Look, you can only take at face value what Nicola Sturgeon says. I mean, I suppose for many, the surprising bit of this is she said that she knew nothing about it, but didn't even have a suspicion about it. Yeah. If you think about this has been going on in terms of, what emerged in court yesterday since 2010 for more than a decade, and Nicola Sturgeon didn't see any of it. Yeah. You go through the list. I've spoken to a number of people in the SNP this morning. It's like a sort of upmarket version of the conveyor belt and the generation game, if you can remember that far back.
It's the most bizarre collection of things, and a lot of them are very high end, like luxury watches, these Mont Blanc pens for like 4 grand and the like. A lot of it is quite tacky stuff or just overpriced. Was he buying this stuff to sell on, or was this stuff all just sitting in the house? And when we saw those pictures of the Scottish police turning up and doing the forensic tents, were they genuinely just like all sitting around the house?
Well, look, I said yesterday if there was an upmarket shop, Peter Murrell was actually shopping in it, right? So what's fascinating about it is that in the main, these goods, certainly the stuff that he bought from some of these shops and stuff he bought online, was being delivered to 4 different addresses, the party HQ, his home, marital home with Nicola Sturgeon, 2 other addresses in Ayrshire where we are to presume belong to Nicola Sturgeon's family. But as you say, the list there's 125 pages in the indictment of stuff that was bought. £3,600 for a wine coaster. I had to go and look to find out what a wine coaster was. 9,000 quid for 2 watches. Nearly 1,000 quid for 3 umbrellas. It's beyond belief. Lots of people in the SNP saying to me this morning they're shell-shocked and gobsmacked and speechless, but Nicola Sturgeon, and as she said consistently, she knew nothing about it. I suppose.
I was going to say, was she living in the home at the time? There have been lots of, they're now estranged. They separated last year, or 24, I think. I mean, was she actually living in the home? Is it possible that she wasn't actually living in that home, even though they were still ostensibly husband and wife, and that's why she didn't know?
Well, this investigation goes on from 2010 right through to, this decade.
They were definitely
So basically, they were married in 2010. She didn't become First Minister, so didn't have the other place she could stay in, Bute House, until 2015. So, yes, they were still living in the marital home. It was interesting yesterday. It's the first time we've heard her describe Peter Murrell as her former husband, as opposed to the term we've all been using, estranged husband. But, it's that is the thing that's been questioned by everybody. The Labour Party saying yesterday, Keir Starmer saying this morning, there's still questions to be answered. How could she not have known, is the headline in many of the newspapers up here this morning. So we still think there's questions to be answered by Nicola Sturgeon. There's questions to be answered by the SNP about the poor governance in the party.
Well, exactly. I mean, she
including the SNP.
He was chief executive, she was leader. They were married together. They basically this nice little enclave. Is there also, you know, a big question about actually, you know, this effectively is one-party state for quite a long period, and actually everyone was a little bit too close to each other. A lack of scrutiny from a lot of the Scottish media that's on board with the independent cause. Some big question marks about how long it took the police to get involved. The party, you know, officials basically calling, you know, like Joanna Cherry and others, you know, traitors for questioning over the party finances, but also the timing of this case finally coming to court very conveniently after the Scottish elections on May the 7th. A lot of people are now saying everything smells very dodgy. Are you there? Can I hear you?
Yeah, look, all of these things need to be poured over. I can remember Alex Salmond, you know, back at the time, Alex Salmond questioning whether it was appropriate for Nicola Sturgeon to be First Minister, while Peter Murrow, who was her husband at the time, was the chief executive of the biggest, most successful political party in the country. I'm not buying into this stuff. You know, a lot of this stuff has only happened because of, you know, the diligent hard work of the media, to be fair, and that continues. But, you know, there are so many questions that still have to be poured over. That question of governance. What were they doing in the SNP, the business convener, the national executive, overseeing all this stuff? What was the party treasurer doing? We're just waiting on a statement from him, the guy at the time. So many questions remain to be answered by the SNP. And all of the people, and this is Joanna Cherry's point, this is absolutely crucial. There were a half a dozen people in that national executive elected by the SNP conference at the time on a platform of more transparency, find out what happened to that £600,000 to a person. To a person, all of those people have effectively had their political careers ended.
Yeah, well, there you are then. I tell you what, though, you've got a question if you're a Scottish voter, just saying, well, hold on a minute, you know, if this is what they're doing with party funds, what are they doing with public funds? John Boothman, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, political correspondent of the Sunday Times. It's gone. Brief response from Tom Slater, please.
There are so many questions to answer, one of which is, like, how much better is a £2 salt and pepper shaker versus the alternative?
This is the main question we're asking.
What is the extent of the difference? I mean, these are the things that we're only